Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Dear representative of the U.S. Embassy in Kosovo, Mr. Welch, dear representatives of KUSA office, dear Dr. Zargari, Dr. Behi, Dr. Hall, Dr. Popovska, Dr. Sharabi, Dr. Kotori, Dr. Pinel, and Dr. Kolgini, dear faculty colleagues, dear students, alumni, and current. I'm honored to welcome you on behalf of the RIT Kosovo AUK Faculty Development Center to the conference Best Practices in Promoting Research During Undergraduate Studies, which event is part of the project enhancing the role of the RIT Kosovo Faculty Development Center to support teaching and the research excellence among RITK faculty and students, which is funded by U.S. Embassy in Kosovo through University Support Grant Program. And I would like to extend my deepest thank you for the program for supporting this initiative. I would like to share a brief overview of the Faculty Development Center of our institution and the current project. Faculty Development Center of the RIT Kosovo is established in 2015 with the support of the U.S. Embassy in Kosovo through University Support Grant Program, which enabled us to get a professional support by bringing an expert from Faculty Development Center of San Jose State University in California, who led us through the process of identifying the initial activities, conducted training for faculty and administration of our center, and follow-up online meetings for future activities. From that time up to date, Faculty Development Center evolved and continuously worked in finding ways and tools for assisting to our faculty development. For that, Faculty Development Center organized different trainings conducted by known experts in the field of the faculty development centers, like those from American University in Cairo, which was a project funded through Amical. We have participated in different online training sessions organized by our RIT Maine, focused on faculty development. We organized professional and development sessions with our faculty and similar activities. We continually assessed our work and the needs of faculty through surveys, and promoting research was one of the most mentioned topics. Hence, we came to the idea of this project. This project was organized in 3 phases. The first one was the training that was enabled by this grant to bring a professor from Indiana University who conducted trainings on topics student-teacher report to ensure student engagement in class and promoting research-based classes across curriculum. In the second phase, we wanted to share with our faculty and our students, alumni and current, and the relevant institutions how we integrate research within our courses in order to gain more insights on how to improve further the research component. For this, we organized a one-day conference, and we had guest speakers from the region, from Institute of Public Finance in Zagreb, Faculty of Economics in Tirana, and also the guest speaker was the resident representative of IMF in Kosovo, who contributed with their presentations on the topic government and growth. Today we mark the 3rd phase of the project, and we are very happy that we managed to gather representatives from U.S. universities, representatives of the universities in the region, RITK alumni from Honor Society, and alumni working in research-based institution, faculty community, and students. We all know the importance of the fact that getting research experience in undergraduate studies helps students understand better the published work, discover their research interests and skills, learn to balance collaborative individual work, and what's most important, in many cases, this marks the beginning of their careers as a researcher. Therefore, we would like to open the discussion on this topic. First, by learning more from the experiences from the U.S. universities and universities in the region on how the research component is included in undergraduate studies and how we can promote and improve further integration of this component into our undergraduate studies program. We appreciate your contribution in the discussion, as this will ultimately derive recommendation that would contribute towards advancement of research work in universities. I would also like to thank Dr. Popovska for coming from Skopje and share her experience with us today. I would like to thank our interim president and dean of faculty, Dr. Sharabi, for his continual support and invite him to address the audience in the name of the RIT Kosovo. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Okay, thank you, Mimosa. Well, one of the important things that we do over here to make sure our students are marketable and they have the cutting edge knowledge when they go out from the RIT. To do that, of course, research is one of the main components. Our faculty continuously, they're involved in the research and they take that research to their classroom. And of course, our students, they're going to be involved, and they are involved continuously with the work that they do. For example, the most recent lab the research lab that we opened last week, maybe you get a chance, during the lunch break or so to take a look. It's where the cafeteria is. You can see some of the new technology that's now is available for our students as far as, developing mobile app and test it, and so 3D printing, many different applications that's available for them, and they're going to have access to it from morning to the night. Now, to do that, and again, being an American university, we want to make sure the model that we have in United States, and it's been working, and it has been shown and proven through the nation that is the most practical way. We said, okay, we're going to bring those and we're going to demonstrate it here and let our faculty, the faculty from other institutions in Kosovo, and of course the students, to see what's happening other places. Then when we start asking them to do that, they don't start harassing us that we're asking for too much, Especially, this past 2-3 days, this was final exam, final grade, I get page after page of appealing grade, And, when they get the F, and for me, it's okay, and I said, why you complain? F is good grade, F stands for friend, That's what I tell them, But, the ones that I cannot handle are going to pass it to Albina, and she's going to take care of them, okay? Now, in United States, each state is kind of independent, of course, is under one law, federal law, but each state, they operate differently. The funding that they have for universities and so are different. Then we said, okay, let's, sample, a couple of places. And what we have for you, some of the distinguished guests that you're going to see them in a few minutes. We have the state of New York, and of course, that's us, we're always proud of that. And then we have the state of New Jersey, the next door neighbor, and we always make fun of them the way they drive in New York. And then we have the state of Kentucky. And over there, when you're driving, when you come to the stop sign, it takes 20 minutes to go because, they wait. And they keep asking, oh, no, you go first, I go first, And so therefore, we have those 3 states over here represented for you. And they're going to share, how they integrate the research, that they do into the classroom. And how they, make sure that the students at the undergraduate level, graduate level, of course, is much easier to participate into the research that they do, okay? At least you get some idea, and, hopefully that's going to be helpful for you when you listen to them. That's the activity that, we have for you today. Now, before I finish, I'd like, of course, to thank the U.S. Embassy, okay? the funding that they have available to promote activities such this, okay? And by us, keep asking for money, hopefully they get more money from the federal government, and we can ask for more money and to do more of these things, in there. Thank you very much. Anytime you have extra money, just give me a call. It's not a problem. We'll make sure to spend it for you nicely. And of course, the faculty staff over here, that they've been working on these activities for the past 8-9 months. They had different, the conferences, the small conferences, larger conferences, workshop that they did. I'd like to thank all of them for the work they did. And I guess I'm gonna stop here. You're gonna have a busy day, enjoy it, and when you take a chance, walk through our facility, see what we have and what we offer to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharabi. Thank you, U.S. Embassy in Kosovo. Thank you, Mr. Welch, Remziye, and thank you, Alba from KUSA office, with whom we've been in contact every day. And I would like to give the word now to Mr. Welch, who would address the participants in the name of the U.S. Embassy University Support Grant Program. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to greet this impressive group, Dr. Poloshka, Dr. Sharabi. It's an honor to join you here to open this event, and welcome to the guests from the United States, from North Macedonia, and of course from RIT Kosovo. So the Embassy is quite proud to be a partner in promoting both faculty development and enhancing research opportunities for undergraduates. And I say we're proud because we believe your work in this area focuses on the future in two important ways. By promoting research at any level, you are promoting the creation of knowledge, new knowledge important to Kosovo and to all of its partners. In addition, you are further developing an important skill set for your students so that they can become producers of knowledge and learn from experience how to judge the value of current theories and how to build on them. So thank you for all your dedication to developing skills for faculty and students here at RIT Kosovo. And I look forward to hearing from all of you about your work this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. I would invite now our alumni, Dita Dobrania, who will moderate the first panel. And if the panelists would like to sit here or as you prefer. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Poloshka, and welcome. I'm going to be brief, just like Mr. Welch was, and invite the panelists of the first panel, Professor Behi, Professor Zargari, and Professor Hall. If you want to sit in a panel, and then as your time to present comes, you can come either to the podium or just present from your seats, because there's no set. So please. Thank you. So this first panel is going to focus on conducting research in undergraduate studies and on experiences from U.S. universities. I come from a social sciences background. I'm an economics major, and for me, I know that one of the biggest challenges in conducting research has always been, and especially in Kosovo, it always comes up as lack of data. Where do we get the data? How do we deal with lack of data? But today we're going to hear from professors from U.S. universities who conduct research that is more scientific, and that's going to be very interesting for us. So I invite Professor Mohammed Behi, that's from the Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering at the New Jersey Institute of Technology, to present his process of conducting scientific research.
Good morning. As you know, research is very, very important. Everything we see around us, many people spend their life to create anything you see, from simple things to the complicated things. This is the things we need to do, and it's very important for future, and it should be continuous. It's not going to be end of research someday. Every day is a day we have to think about new things, improving or developing a new product, new application, new materials. That's the way we have to do it in order to survive. As you know, like 1980 or 1979, there was no computer. There was, but I remember you had to punch the card. If you have a program, you take the card to the center of the college and they run it for you. Next day they say there is something wrong and you have to do it again and change few lines, change few cards, and then give it to them and they run it again. And if you are lucky, it's going to be nothing wrong with the program. Right now you have a phone and you can do everything on your phone. This is based on the research many people done to get to this point. And my experience, which I have 30 years, research and development, I was at Honeywell International for 15 years, research headquarters in New Jersey. Then I went to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, continuing my own business. I have a research company, a small research company, and I have been doing research for 30 years on different material, different application. I have like 56 US and European patent on different application, different materials. And I'm very glad to be here. If a student need or have any question, I can give them the right answer, hopefully, and tell them how to do the research. And it's very important to start with the basic research, and it has to be based on the equipment and ability you have in the college, and you can build it up slowly to take it to the next level. But as I understand, you have a 3D printing machines here, and it's a good start to add few more equipment, maybe 2, 3 equipment, and do some research just with the 3D printing. Recently, I have developed 2 materials, new materials for 3D printing metal alloys, which the material is not in the market, but it's working very nice. My research right now is to reduce probably $250,000 machine, reduce the cost to less than $10,000, which is going to be benchtop 3D printing metal alloys. You can print metal parts, whatever your design is. And this material is available right now, not in the market, but I have it. I'm looking for the investor to come and take it. And this is the recent, I'm working with the Air Force, I'm working with the space companies, and that's the things I'm developing for them. Basically, I do work on something which is not existed, and based on the need of the company or Air Force or this space company, I develop the things they want. And the things I have done, when you do research, either the product and the things they want you to do, either it exists, you want to improve it, or you want to develop something new, is 2 different things. And basically everything starts from researching the literature. You see what other people done, right? And you go from there. And of course you have an objective to achieve, your topics. And to me, when I have a research project or research problem to solve, I continuously think about it 24 hours, 24/7. Even I'm at home, I'm just thinking how to do this, continuously. And usually sometimes I come up with the solution at night or early in the morning. Any research I have done is completed as far as today, accomplished the things I wanted to achieve. And I like to have a very complicated and hard research to do, to find something which is, to find a solution for some application or some problem. And I enjoy it a lot. And people doing research, they have to love the things they do. It's not only for research. Anything you do, if you like it, you know, the best day for me is Monday, right? Because I'm going to go to work. This is the best day for me. I hate Friday, I hate Saturday and Sunday. Because, and usually I go 95% of the time, I'm going to work Saturday and most of the time on Sunday too. Because I'm curious to see what the things I did, what is the result. I cannot wait. This is the things I have, you know, I like to do. And I mean, I'm not rich because I don't think about money when I do the things, right? I just want to do that thing and solve it. Then if there is money, it's of course. And I have a story. I could be very rich, but it didn't happen because of some, I don't want to discuss it here, you know, but it didn't happen, and I don't care. You know, that's my background. And any question I can answer.
Yeah, we will leave the questions for the end.
Okay. Yeah. What else I can say? Should
It's me. Can I have, please, first of all, thanks to U.S. Embassy. Thank you for facilitating what's happening today. If I can have, because my approach to this was not content, but how to do it, and within a different environment. So I just want to see if possible, the PowerPoint page by page. I would take that 15 minutes to run through within a different context. I called it inclusion of research in undergraduate curriculum. I first thank Mimosa, FDC, Dr. Sharabi. I mentioned Embassy. And I have a special friend here who is a researcher, Redwan. He came from Tirana this morning. Correct, Redwan? To here, you came to see me. Redwan teaches in the UBT, University of Business for Technology. We met in 2016, and he's a graduate of University of Kentucky in Kentucky. And he's a researcher. Thank you for coming to see me here this morning. In the US, there are three types of universities. One that were land-grant institutions. They came to being to research in agricultural and mechanical, A&T, A&M. They were research-based. There were some colleges, they called them teacher training college. They changed to state universities, and those are the teaching colleges. So those teaching colleges, one of it is this Morehead State University. Of course, I work for the School of Engineering and Computer Science. But the teaching universities, they taught that the teachers have to teach, and a student should use the knowledge. They are the customers of knowledge. Gradually, in the last 25 years, there has been some significant research that the research says no. Undergraduate students' engagement in the research helps them develop better for the future, adjusting themselves with the complexity of the coming world. I was a student in Huntsville, Alabama. I was in the Redstone Arsenal post that they were doing the research. I was from Iran, and that time country of Iran had a good relation with US, and I was a student there. We had a course called Digital Circuits to learn half adder, a minor, very simple the digital class. We had a big room, and when you get inside, those vacuum tubes, pentode, tetros, those things were so hot, and it was difficult to do to even learn a class that is a basic computer science class. That time, 1960s, were the beginning of the computers. Now, access to knowledge. When I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, I used to go to the library and read books. I had to literally take them. Now, you mentioned that your cell phone connects you to the world. So has changed, things have changed. So the teaching institutions, we wanted to see how we can engage students, undergraduate students, in the research. And we thought that wasn't the student that they didn't want to do research. It was the faculty, tenure requirements, that was 80% teaching. So really the faculty resisted to engage students in the undergraduate. So in our state university, the faculty had to be brought into research, not the students. The student could do it. And that was an issue of concern. So if you just page by page. So these are some, I don't want to go through them one by one, some reasons that the student, this is research, there has been research since at least 2000. The research says that the student become confident, they self-respect, engagement, and they feel a colleague of the faculty. So they become a junior colleague of the faculty. And because of that, we had to create some way of engaging them in the research. So in 2000, next page, 5 and 6, the university decided to pay for research. So there is a system in the US that they call it work study. They pay students to work, but this was 15 hours a week from freshman to senior level, and pay them between $7.50 to $9 an hour to conduct research. But that had a requirement. The requirement was that they should be good in mathematics, good ACT or SAT, good in English, good, I mean, at the freshman level. And then, so we began with 34 students. Later on, it quadrupled. This year, if you just get to the next page, please. I will get back to this page. So this year, we had over 200 researchers with 100 mentors, and that paid is now only 40% of the students are paid. The rest of them are volunteers. So faculty are now actually recommending, nominating, and sponsoring their students to do the research in their discipline, that they belong to. For example, now we created a day celebration of, I will pass this around, take a look at it. That day is a celebration of research, if you could just pass it around, please. And then there is a time that selected papers gets published and posted at the state capitol, so now has a value for them. So the 197 undergraduate students, they, with faculty, 100 judges, I have served as a judge, as a facilitator, as a mentor myself. So this now has become a practice. Instead of we going to the student and asking them, they come to the faculty. Every student has a faculty mentor. Now, maybe the research stops at the end of freshman year. They continue another or the same research to the end. So if when you look at it, our observation, we give them some. We give them travel budget to travel and make national presentations. Has created an added value to them. And then they get with the faculty, publish in the national papers, with the faculty, become faculty, colleague of the faculty. If you, next page, please. So now I have that book, but some samples of research, different disciplines and different colleges. We have 4 major colleges, and these are some research that the students have done for the arts and humanities. Ridwan, you know the faculty of that college. And then the next one is the College of Science. They are scientific. The next, there are samples. I just put the samples of that. There are students. These things are the students' research. And then next one is the College of Business and Technology. They are technology and College of Education. So different disciplines and different colleges have in that day, 24th of April, and every year is the last week of April, and they make a presentation. Then the selected paper get prize, go to the state, and then our observation shows that the students who go through this research, they are capable of getting to master degrees, getting to PhD degrees, and they begin research in the junior level. Now in the United States has gone further than that. In high schools, many high schools, we have a course called design, in the engineering, of course, design engineering. So research begins in middle and high school now. So the students, the scholarship they get, and that one, this is what is my job. So I did what I presented to you, what that regional supposed to be teaching university, now not anymore. They are conducting research, doing, but this is a center that we have created. We call it, Dr. Sharawi was talking about the research base, the Center for the, we call it manufacturing system, which is engineering mostly, and we have the Siemens, the company, has helped us to have a, they call it $209 million software, they call it PLM, Product Life Management Software, those who are in the research, and then they call it 2.9 million. And then with that software, we are working with Toyota, the company in Kentucky, and this center that we have created, students, actually undergraduate students with the faculty, have the opportunity to research. You mentioned the materials, we have material testing, and if you get to the next page, please, for me. You know, this is what is this doing? First we design, then we take the automation, integration, and then robotics laboratory and material testing, that is properties and testing. And next page, please. Some sample of prototyping, machining. Next page. The CNC students not only learn, but also they practice. They practice their findings. In the right side, we have connected PLCs with the student research, automation through virtual reality. The students have created it. And the left side is the Fanuc robots. We use them. Students has created the right side, which is a Delta robot. The students designed it, built it, and programmed it. In the right side is the student-made inside Delta robot. And we are doing some research with agricultural automation to help the agriculture, what they are doing. And we are working on a system that virtual reality, because we are in a remote area, then is a little bit difficult to have a laboratory of 45 or 50 robots or programmable logic controllers. So we are now making it possible for people in the two-year colleges in remote areas to see that without having the machine, to work with the machine in the virtual manner. And there are some examples of national awards that the students have have received. And the companies that they have, some of them have they themselves opened their own company. So the mechatronics, a combination of electromechanic these days, they want to do the electronic plus manufacturing or mechanic, they call it mechanic, and then virtual reality lab. These are all research of the student. And in our conclusion, to us is apparent that students who have gone through this research, they have had much higher opportunities. One of those people who earned the National Research Award, John Haggerty, he was admitted to Iowa State University. He finished his PhD, and they hired him as a professor in the same university. Mostly US universities don't employ their own graduates after they finish, but this gentleman was so good that they employed him as a professor in the, I think it was one of that. So if I can have the page that I mentioned, like, yes, one. If you click on the page, is a video. I want to just take 5 minutes and show you that excitement. No, maybe I have to show you how much I have to do research. Can you bring it back to the... That is my PowerPoint. What happened to my... Yeah.
Morgan State University has a great history of support for student research and creative activity outside the classroom. And today, we're gathered at the Adrian Dorn University Center for the 14th annual celebration of student scholarship. Today, we have 269 students, both undergraduate and graduate students, presenting their work outside the classroom that they did with 112 faculty mentors. Their efforts today will be judged by well over 100 faculty, staff, and community judges, and prizes will be given for presentations of outstanding merit.
As a first-generation college student, it means a lot to me to get to do something like science-based that my family will get to be proud of, and I get to be proud of, and my professor can be proud of. I've had such a blast doing this. I really love my project, and I really learned to love maths and gain skills that will be marketable in the future.
It's really cool to see all these from all kinds of different academic fields come and be interested not only in my poster but everybody else's poster. We put a lot of hard work in the lab and preparing the poster and writing the abstracts and everything. So it's really cool to see people show some interest in my work and other people's works.
Well, right now I've been super excited. I presented to my professor last night, and she gave me the good go. She said, you seem like you know everything you're talking about, and I think that's what we need out of it. I'm super happy, and I also have a lot of people that I've been working with, so it's been really good to work one-on-one with not only my mentor, but also fellow students that are on the same level as me, and just making it a learning process that we all get to go through together.
I know that agriculturists are really trying to push sustainable farming right now because of the current climate change and factors such as that. And my research over water harvesting is a very sustainable practice that I would really like to talk about the environmental benefits and such.
I'm really proud of what the students have done here today. I mean, they worked really hard with professors in the classroom. You know, that's what this day is about, is, you know, it's a lot more than just what you learn in the classroom. It's what these students are able to do in the laboratories and out in the communities with these mentors that they have that really makes a difference in the type of education that students get here at Morehead State University.
Always an awesome day on Celebration Student Scholarship. Happy to be here as the Dean, and and very proud of our students in the College of Business and Technology. They do a tremendous amount of work to get where they are, and I also appreciate the faculty that serve as those mentors for them. They put a lot of work into this event as well, and it's always a great day and to see those students presenting their research.
Yeah, we're really excited to get the word out about the water testing lab. Not a lot of people know about its location on campus and the importance of its importance in the wider Eastern Kentucky community. And we're also really excited to be here and participating with all of our undergraduate fellowships and seeing all the work that everyone else has done.
We had a lot of fun throughout the whole year that we have done this research, and we learned a lot of lab techniques that we know that's very important for our future education in professional school. And we built up really good relationship as lab partners too.
And it's the smiling faces are, I finally finished this project, and now I'm proud to show the work I've done and the research that I've done. I've obtained a great degree here at Morehead State. We're very excited about what they've done.
Thank you. I will be available. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Zargari. Now I'm inviting Professor James Hall from RIT in Rochester, New York, who's the Dean of University Studies and the Executive Director of the School of Individualized Study, to present independent research in open curriculum environment.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a piece of video as well, a success story, and then we'll kind of work backwards from that. I hope I'm going to go backwards.
The end of our first semester, and we're on track to finish this semester ahead of schedule, under budget, and overproducing.
I think over the next semester or two, our big goals include, teaching everybody, getting everybody caught up to where the technology is at this point, and reaching a point where we have a group of individuals who knows this technology very well and understands how to apply it in order to create awesome projects. In a year or two out, I think that one of our big goals is to be sustainable and to be able to, create products that people will find useful and that will be able to change people's lives for the better.
Personally, my favorite project would have to be getting the fabric electrodes working, because I think it would just be so cool to be able to have all that data coming from something that's just sewn into your clothing, and it'd be so cheap to make, and just to make sure it actually is usable and works to an extent that it's actually valuable to do.
Right now I'm working on a NeoPixel bracelet that lights up to show the signal, and this is what's going to be a part of each project to show that the signals are coming from the MyWire, just a visual representation. Seeing that the project's actually working itself is just showing that there's actually signals being read.
So this project is a Morse code translator. So I'm using an Arduino to interpret signals from this device, which is called a MyoWare, which can sense how clenched your muscles are. And you can see when I clench, a little LED lights up, and when I release, it goes away. So I can use this to send different length pulses to the processor. So I can do a dot, dot, dash, and it'll interpret that as a U. Moving forward in this project, we're going to get it battery powered, and we're going to have it actually display on your arm. And it's moving forward pretty quickly.
My current favorite project is the RC car, because first I think it's really cool to have a little RC car that can drive around based on your movements from your muscles. and the bugs with it are really funny.
Originally, we were actually doing a racing game, which was kind of like Need for Speed, but the project leads wanted something more tangible, and I liked the idea of cars. So I thought, how about an RC car? And the sticker on the side was my idea.
To stay in our goal of making it reproducible and cheap to manufacture, we are starting to make our own chips. We're doing some chip fabrication, building our own machine learning algorithms in-house. So to do that, we need to get time on the machines and access those machines. We need to buy some of that machinery and hardware. So the support from this crowdfunding campaign will go to buying those materials and to making sure that we get the headsets and other necessary hardware. Every dollar that we get in will help contribute to the impact that we want to have and help make these systems more efficient and more interactive.
So the most important part of that was that there was no faculty present at all. The main student there, Harrison Canning, is a student in the School of Individualized Study at RIT. This is the partner to RITK. And we recruited him a year and a half ago, and he told us that to get him to come RIT, we were going to have to fund his idea to run a neurocomputing lab. And we are lucky that we have a fairly visionary vice president for research who provided him with $10,000 in startup funds. This lab has now grown to 35 undergraduate students with a single faculty member providing outside supervision. They've produced 3 products this year. We expect all of them are going to result in new patents. They are focusing on brain-computer interface work. They've developed an automatic wheelchair. They've developed a new gaming control system. And I'm blanking on what the third one was. So anyways, what I wanted to do today was to kind of make an argument for providing students with lots of autonomy in the undergraduate research space. And one of the things that we're finding is that this is completely consistent with the way in which this particular generation learns. We're finding more and more folks that I would describe as being intrinsically motivated, somewhat autodidact in their orientation to learning. They have been working with technology since they were 7, 8, 9 years old. And the notion that they're going to come to our institutions and wait and make their way through a curriculum that begins with introduction to something and works its way up to something called advanced is very unlikely. I tell the story all the time that the first thing that my children do whenever they buy a new piece of technology is they throw the instruction manual out. And one of the challenges we have as faculty is that we are the instruction manual, and they are less and less interested in us as we go. So I work in a very distinctive part of U.S. higher education. I've worked for 20 years operating environments in what I would call experimental spaces. I was at the University of Alabama where I ran a unit called New College, which was part of a kind of late 1960s Deweyan reform project to give students more autonomy, more control over their curriculum. I then ran an organization called the Consortium for Innovative Environments and Learning, which was a consortium of about 20 experimental liberal arts colleges around the country. Many of them operate without majors, without traditional assessment systems. Instead of letter grades, they will operate with typically narrative assessment. Let's see as we get along here. And a lot of these places are not particularly interested in traditional disciplinary structures as well. And I'm lucky to be at RIT where there's some interest in continuing to explore this space. And one of the things that I've had an interest in over the last decade is how we can partner in a richer way with RIT Kosovo to bring our different degree structures together. The degree that we give out in the School of Individualized Study is the same degree that we give out here at RITK, right now called the Bachelor of Science in Applied Arts and Sciences. We use it very differently. Here in Kosovo, we use it because of the great flexibility that it provides, allows us to allow students access to much greater kinds of content. But really the way in which we're trying to drive it in Rochester is as an environment built around autonomy, built around the opportunities to front end, in some sense, experiential learning, including problem-based learning and undergraduate research. All of these things are what the American Association of Colleges and Universities refer to as HIPS, or high impact practices. We were talking a little bit earlier about what we know about measurable impacts. The key ones in the US context are students who participate in undergraduate research. They're more likely to graduate on time. We know they're more likely to stay enrolled in college. And the really interesting impact is that 10 years after graduation, these students report much greater satisfaction with their undergraduate education. And what we know there is that they're more likely to give back to their institutions. So what I want to kind of walk you towards is just my experience of working in this kind of space and what we've found to be best practice in this area. Oh, I moved the wrong one. Let's see. And let me just engage a couple of typically what are major faculty concerns. One fear is that if we kind of front load undergraduate research and give students this kind of autonomy to identify their own intellectual interests and their own problems to solve, is that we'll have to sacrifice coverage. As a faculty member, I remember how I was trained, and and that you start at the beginning and you move up through something called intermediate and something called advanced, and that's the best way to ground conceptual understanding of any particular disciplinary knowledge. The research around problem-based learning, interdisciplinarity, and undergraduate research is beginning to help us to change that just a little bit. The first data we have, again, are on those large-scale institutional outcomes about time to degree and persistence, but we're starting to get good data around the way in which leading with undergraduate research can produce good command of conceptual content, regardless of preparation. This is another thing I think that we need to overcome, this perception that we only let students who have particularly strong preparation to be engaged in undergraduate research, and I think there's increasingly a sense that that is not the case. There's some great experiments out there that are worth paying attention to. Purdue Polytechnic Institute is a complete revisioning of what was the College of Engineering Technology at Purdue University. And they've wholly rebuilt their curriculum around problem-based learning and undergraduate research. Students do not now begin with a course called Introduction to Engineering Technology. They begin with a course called Problem Solving 1, and they're immediately thrown into undergraduate research opportunities, again, regardless of preparation, regardless of what their long-term disciplinary goals are. They're working hard at PPI to bring students together across disciplinary boundaries. One thing I would highlight in that, the Brain-Computer Interface Lab, is that they've recruited students to the lab who have expertise in marketing, expertise in writing, in addition to students who are working in electrical and mechanical engineering and finding ways to work together, much the same way in which they're going to have to do so in the workplace. Olin College of Engineering is another great place to see this research base transforming. Olin is recruiting students to their campus based upon their ability to do collaborative work. So they've shifted the kind of algorithm away from how students succeed on standardized tests, and they actually bring students to campus now in their last year of high school, and they put them through a set of problem-solving activities looking for students who work well collaboratively in teams. Quest University in British Columbia is a new university. Students do 2 years of coursework together, but in the junior year, they're no longer taking courses. They're assigned to work on a particular research problem, which they do for the next 2 years. I've had the opportunity to visit Fulbright University in Vietnam. They're literally building from the ground up a curriculum wholly around undergraduate research and problem-based activity, letting students participate in the activity of designing the curriculum itself. And another new enterprise, Station One, which has been designed by Christine Ortiz, who was the Dean of Graduate Study at MIT. And again, she's trying to build a whole new university from the ground up that will be without courses. It will all be problem-based, research driven. So lots and lots of exciting experiments around the world. that are suggesting you can actually build around undergraduate research rather than think about it as an add-on. So what have we found useful in terms of how do you get success when you're giving students lots of autonomy? Well, it's the combination of structure and autonomy, in my experience over the past 20 years, that produces transformation. Key to us letting turning Harrison loose to build this laboratory was a really strong proposal process. And in all of our undergraduate research opportunities and actions, we found the proposal process to be really key to getting good outcomes. It's the place in which you begin the work of initiating students into what disciplinary conventions look like. A lot of what we do are simply give students examples of successful proposals so as to know how to shape their sense of what the key research question might be. We ask students to make formal presentations of what they would like to do in the undergraduate research space. So it's not simply about somebody nodding their head and turning you loose, but we want you to stand up in front of an audience like this and present and make your case. And a strong emphasis on revision. It's probably the most important message that I think we can send to students in the undergraduate research space, is that nobody gets it right the first time, and it's really key to have a process of iteration and reiteration that leads to mastery of conceptual content. We work hard at what I would call a shared imagination of reasonable deliverables, so it's not simply about turning students loose with a long-away deadline that we hope they're going to make. That's probably, in my mind, where these projects break down. Lots of intermediate steps. Again, lots of opportunity for students to have to present work in progress. Helping them understand what the long-term research process looks like. They're used to, out of their high school education, a situation where they're given a task, they write up that task, they turn that task in, and they get a grade on it. That's not actually a good way to introduce someone to the research world. We spend a lot of time emphasizing the building of networks, and not only the building of networks within the institution that you find yourself in. Important research work, lasting research happens when you reach out into the world and you find folks that have knowledge and expertise that's useful to you. And we encourage undergraduates that they can do this. We have a remarkable freshman year imaging science experience at RIT, where students are actually given a budget that they can contact experts around the world and bring those experts to campus to help build out proposals. Again, show work in progress often. The articulation of next steps. One of our biggest struggles, obviously, within the way in which we structure most of higher education in the US is that it's built around 15-week semesters, and obviously most research does not work in 15-week chunks. And so students have to be involved in a process of learning how to work beyond the semester, how to articulate next steps regardless of how your project has turned out. And then finally, it's important that students are encouraged to distribute results. Probably the thing that is, I think, least meaningful about an undergraduate education for most students in the North American context. You consume chunks of knowledge in these discrete units called courses, and there's not necessarily a relationship between what you do in one semester to what happens in the next. So poster sessions like the ones that were described previously are important. We like to post the work up all over campus so that people can see it in an ongoing way. Students can think about themselves as participants in a knowledge community that is going to give them feedback. Maturity, failure, and disappointment. Again, after the sacrifice of control on the part of faculty, I would say the greatest pushback we get from faculty members on doing work in the space is that so often the research results themselves are incomplete or disappointing. And I spend a lot of time trying to help faculty understand the difference between a failed project and what I would call in-progress professionalism. Most research fails. It's something that we probably need to remind ourselves. Again, research exists in a process of iteration and revision, and the fact that someone, whether they're working in or mean to work in the university or out in the startup world, most projects fail, and that's not a bad thing at all. We do want to work with students around what I would call transitional or in-progress professionalism, meeting deadlines, delivering things on spec are important opportunities for us to engage and improve the lives of our students. I would encourage all of you to try to break yourselves again of the pattern of thinking about undergraduate research as being only for our best students and an opportunity to enrich the lives of our best students. I would encourage you to strongly invest in your bottom quartile of students. This is the space which we see undergraduate research as being most transformative. Students that have been academically marginal, students who have kind of bounced around, unhappy with the ways in which they are. They'll often report that they feel like they're still in high school. I'm still turning in work according to the express need of an authority figure. I don't feel engaged or fully invested in my education. What I see the biggest transform is marginal students becoming very good students, marginal students beginning to think about what the relationship is between what they learn in the classroom and what they might do in the future. And then I would encourage you to celebrate successes of all kinds. Again, not to worry so much about the research successes in a discrete way. The projects that the students in that BCI lab have produced are impressive, and no doubt the university will celebrate them and take credit for the patents and probably look for a piece of the action in the intellectual property space. But the stuff that's really exciting to me is to see, again, the fact that they're able to make professional presentations. That video that you saw was part of a crowdfunding platform that RIT has put together for students who are engaged in undergraduate research to go out into the world looking for opportunities to engage with angel investors or other funders that may want to drive products along to another step. To me, just learning about that process is as important as anything that that lab might produce. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all three presenters. As I promised, we will take questions now. Now that the Professor Baskin. Okay, so we're going to take one question at a time, if that's okay.
Give it to Baskin first.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to get into trouble.
All of this is most interesting, I have to say. I just have one very simple question, is that so many, I don't teach in engineering and I don't teach in the sciences. And I think that a substantial number of our majors here at RIT Kosovo are actually not in engineering and mainly in the social sciences. And so my question is that a lot of the presentation that you were giving it's perfect for something like engineering. And particularly when you're dealing with international relations and public policy, it's a lot more difficult to have the kind of hands-on management possibly. And I was just wondering if you could address ways in which these can be adapted to those areas. Thank you.
Mark, I would say that we found in the social impact, social entrepreneurship space to be an especially good way to motivate students who have interest in the social sciences and humanities. I would also highlight that at RIT in Rochester, the mantra of the moment is finding the intersection between arts, technology, and design. And so we certainly see students in the digital humanities space, and in one case finding ways to find themselves in this world. I'm most intrigued in making, again, investments in the social entrepreneurship space moving forward as a way to bring together a solid set of social science skills, whether they be in the public policy or sociology space, and the opportunity to shape enterprises that have complex interface with the world that allows students to, again, be engaged with various audiences, both inside and outside the institution. My own training is as a historian, so I don't know what the hell those kids are doing. I just kind of shake my head, and my joke is these kids come into my office all the time, and they ask for the support, and I always end up kind of walking out of the room wondering who the adult is, because this guy, Harrison Canning, that I mentioned to you, we have another guy that we've been working with. Entrepreneurship is another space where it seems to me the kind of technical lines between what constitutes research and what is enterprise doesn't mean so much to me. It's about students finding application, finding the way to engage in long-term problem solving. That's important. But I don't find the disciplinary space to be a barrier. And again, in this engineering lab, those kids have much more smartly than us, right, who are deeply invested in disciplinary boundaries. Those kids went out and recruited students in marketing, went out and recruited students in writing. They knew that to be successful in what they were doing, they needed that whole range of skill sets to be in play.
Thank you. My observation is that although I represented myself as a person of engineering and I showed some engineering base, our university is more focused on the humanities, and we have an institute called IREP, Public Policy, and I could say that more in the College of Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences, we had many more faculty sponsor and student research for the global events of our time. So students are more interested, or we encourage them to be interested in public policies, in social sciences, in sociology. Although in engineering you see the tangible result and they make something, it appears to be more important and engaging, is not. The public policies research is more of a global type thing, and is the time for it now. If you look at that book that for this year's research, our social and soft sciences research are many more than science and technology research. It is the faculty and the administration of an institution to engage them, to facilitate the students' learning. The sense of inquisitiveness, asking questions, why I am here and what's going on to me these days, why I'm facing these issues, is very motivating subject for the undergraduate students to take and to pursue research. I do not see any negative issue related to undergraduate research in what you are having here. The more of a communication. I heard you teach business communication, you teach the business type, and also sociology, psychology even type. It is very interesting. We have a high school level in the US, they call it Governor's Scholar Program. They take the rising seniors student, for example, in Kentucky and many other states, to engage them in leadership. And that most of the undergraduate students are interested in psychology, in sociology, in anthropology. So I did not see any limitation to engage in research. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. Now the three models that you presented over here. Now I go to the NGIT first. Back in 80s, it was known as the Nerd Center of New Jersey, and that's what was referred to. And at those days, I was a student when I went actually to the president, as part of student clubs, and so the place the university was, at night you couldn't walk outside. By around like 9 o'clock, you try to be inside type of thing. It was not a safe place. When the funding was given to the president to move the university in a better location, he said no. And we went to ask him. He said, if I move out from here, you guys gonna go home. The faculty, they go home. He wanted us to stay in the labs at night, and many nights we sleep in the lab. you know. And that was the mentality that you go to the research, and it was all faculty driven. It was 100% faculty driven concept there. And then the research was, again, mostly graduate student. Undergraduate were not part of the research. Then in Kentucky, which you moved from the teaching institution, now you're getting into the research institution. Research has been integrated and you're trying to move in that direction. And RIT, which is the applied. An example of that is the School of the Individual Study. That is a customized degree. You can have liberal art, you can have business, you can have engineers work together and so. There's a 3 different model that was presented here. Now looking at Kosovo, a young country, okay? Of course our university, very young university. Some of the things that mentioned in high school, you know, having the resources to move the students, you know, into the research category, and so they're not available here. At the universities also, we have very limited, you know, resources, you know, to move in a direction of applied research, nerd center, or integration part, and so. What model do you think is more practical for us in order to reach, you know, eventually, of course, the goal is to become a nerd center, okay? Which model we should be integrate, you know? Well, we are moving, we are in the path of RIT model, you know, that's the curriculum that we offer over here. Is that the right model for here? Or we have to move to the Kentucky model or Jersey model, just go to the faculty only and move in that direction? What do you recommend?
I'm biased. I think we've made the kind of partial investment in the RIT model to this point here at RITK. And I do think part of the challenge is messaging to students their own responsibility to drive the conversation. I'm really intrigued by the Station 1 model that I mentioned to you that Christine Ortiz from MIT is trying to be building in Boston. She has a kind of social interest in building a university that's much more responsive to underrepresented groups in the United States, and is interested in how she can build a research institution from the ground up to do that. And she intends to make very strategic investments in non-capital intense research opportunities. So even in the computing space, looking for research opportunities that do not require supercomputer investment. They intend to make no permanent investment in physical infrastructure at all. So they're using all repurposed industrial space in the city of Boston as their physical infrastructure. And it's, again, this is a startup and an experiment, and who knows how it will go. But it's very interesting to see this new startup attitude to institutions around the world that you can build over time, you can make small strategic investments that you hope have significant intellectual payoff and will attract the enthusiasm of outside investors that will grow your base. So I would say, for me, it's partially about the RIT model, but it's about driving the RIT model beyond where it is at the given moment, and thinking like a startup, thinking like an institution that has to be very smart about how it uses its initial resources.
I think I came here to introduce the Kentucky model because I was here in 2016, and Dr. Peshkopia gave me a tour of outside of center of Kosovo. So thank you. I know what's going on in Kosovo and surrounding. And he took me to that Jailani mosque or temple. I saw real people. I saw what's going on and some surroundings. So I believe that Dr. Sharabi, the Kentucky, not University of Kentucky or Louisville, I'm not going to talk about their research. Our type of research would facilitate your job. Why? First, the infrastructure. You can't bring RIT here. So you have the name, and hopefully it gets to there. Let's face it, in 2005 and 6, fall 2005 and spring 2006, we were able to have 34 students, every one of them 15 hours a week, every hour $10. When you multiply that, doesn't come to significant budget. So we approached that because we did not want to be a failure. Resulted in some research work presented at the university. We gave them award, and then some of them were selected at the state, and suddenly a senator, the majority leader now in the Senate, is from Louisville area, and he sent a letter to that student. Dear Kamal, thank you for participating in the research. Suddenly this became big in a small city in East Kentucky. The gentleman gets from Senator McConnell a letter congratulating him. So it became a good thing, a motivating factor with this 34 students. It didn't cost that much. You could write a grant to the embassy, similar to the one that we have, and found it. So it began like this. Gradually, we improved upon it. And now, this year, so far, we have 1,700 graduates. And that is very correct that you mentioned. We had, at the beginning, ACT of at the pre-calculus level, and a good English writing. That's not really the purpose of integration of research in undergraduate, because possibly 70% of our students would be out of it. Gradually, the faculty, by the name of it, it got impact on the tenure. If you were a faculty and you mentored every year a couple of research, that was positive as a part of your publication. So therefore, faculty got rewarded by that research. Students, the same thing. And then now 34 this year became 200 plus. We had 197 undergraduate, 60 graduate, so 267 people. And we still pay that minimum. The people who are taking research as a paid research is 40%. The rest of them really are engaged in research. So while research can be said and talked about and published about is good, people will not just take something that has no tangible benefit out of it. We tell the student, you look, your classmate was a researcher, undergraduate research fellow, we call it URF. He is now working in NASA from Morehead, Kentucky. A computer science major is now working for NASA. That is a motivation beyond it. So establishing your research here wouldn't cost that much, and step from the beginning, although you are RIT, and Morehead is no RIT, but it's beginning like what we did, it can gradually build upon it and become successful. Is my thinking, because I was involved from the beginning of that undergraduate research fellow as a partner, as a person who advocated. We could not believe that we'll come up at the end so successful that we are now. Thank you.
Own work. It sounds like many students are also just motivated by pursuing the answer to a particular question that they have. And in a lot of ways, I think that's the ideal, right? The kind of pure ideal. So you've talked about institutions kind of being built from the ground up, because the structure of the current institutions actually don't support the pursuing of that question. So I wonder what, for those institutions that already exist and have particular structures, what's the avenue to encourage students to become in touch with that question? Whether, I don't quite understand, does it come from life circumstances and they're encouraged to pursue that question, which perhaps is unanswerable but worth pursuing, or does it come from being engaged in the research itself? So I have many questions around that, but my specific question from the perspective of the embassy itself to support these changes is, do you see faculty development space as an avenue for current institutions to explore that? Is it shifting the role of faculty into more of a counselor space? And it makes me think of Parker Palmer's work, which is about putting the discipline at the center of the relationship as opposed to putting the professor at the center of the relationship. So you can take any aspect of that. I'm very interested.
Okay, yeah, I think whatever style you're gonna implement here, two things to me is very important to do. One is accessibility of the student to the research lab, and the other is freedom of the student to implement their idea. It's very important. For example, 1988, I went to Honeywell, applied for the job, and they said, yes, we need somebody, but we need, it was 15th of December, in November. They said, we need somebody until end of the year, 1.5 months. I said, okay, I take the job. And I went there, and they introduced me to one of the scientists. They said, you're going to work with Dr. So-and-so. And then I went there, and this guy, this scientist, he was a very nice person, and he was very knowledgeable. He gave me the topic, the research topic they were trying to achieve. They said, this is a research topic. These are the equipment. He trained me for a week, and he left me alone. He said, this is where we are. We want to go from here to here. And this is everything you can use. And anything you want to order, any materials, anything you need, you just order, right? And in 5-6 months, I came up with a new idea, and that was actually my first patent in superconducting ceramics. At that time, IBM was creating same material with the very expensive devices, laser, putting these layers. I came up with a very simple way to make the same material with better properties and better qualities. Very, very cheap. That's why I say the freedom of the student to put their idea in the research is very important. You have to let them do what they think, as long as they are interested in doing research. And if somehow there is no grade involved, or you're giving them some certification or something, because getting grade is very important to a student. They have to get a good grade, right? Then they can be relaxed and do the things they want to do, they want to achieve. I think that's the freedom of doing things is very important, you know.
I have a, if I understood your question, your question relates to how we engage students in research of all types. If students are interested or motivated, well, at the undergraduate freshman, a person 18 years old, they are interested in different things, not necessarily the research in the field. So the role of a faculty as a mentor is important. So if our teaching changes from delivering based on the pre-scheduled notion of syllabi, we call it syllabus. This is week 1, beginning and end, and you give me back what I told you. And good students are those who sit in the front and they give me back everything I taught them. That possibly will not encourage research. So if the faculty ask questions, open-ended questions, For example, where we taught, we didn't have a biomechanics program. In those engineering technology classes, a young man, his father from Paintsville, Kentucky, southeast Kentucky, he got heart attack, and they put a stent. So this young man, in the class I witnessed that, he became interested in choosing the material, analyzing material, designing and selecting a different. He has a thesis now. The thesis is CAD analysis of materials for creating a stent. So, and in the same place, there was a female student in the classes that was from a part of Iran that is an earthquake. So some years ago, earthquake killed 60,000 people. She was interested, civil engineer, interested to analyze and find out how we can build earthquake-proof buildings. Because of that student interest, I had to borrow a faculty from University of Kentucky to direct the thesis. So these are not the norm. There are people who they themselves have a pre-motivated concept of what they want to do for something. This is good. When we have those kind of people, it's good. But the purpose of this meeting, I believe, is include research for normal people, for people who may or may not have interest in research. So the challenge for the faculty is to have open-ended questions in class. When they teach a subject, they look forward. What about if I was in 82nd floor of Empire State in 1978. Suddenly we stop, I don't know, 82 or 80, stop. The elevator didn't go up, didn't go down. So looking at the face of people in before 1980, what happened to them, that by itself is a research. But I was with few people there. So when we teach people anything, especially social, public policy, is that what if something that we expect didn't happen, if something else happened? So the mentor then makes the question and a student engage in thinking. And what my colleague, Dr. Bay mentioned, is that he was afforded the equipment, the resources to research. In here, the students don't have that. So how the faculty engage them with what they have available to them to conduct research. So that is the answer to that question is that we start from base. We start from what we have, and then that research, faculty and student, we get involved in preparing grants, and then the grants will be National Science Foundation or through the U.S. Grant, or even public people can invest in their idea of research. But as a collaborative effort between faculty and student begins with faculty, not the student. So that is my thinking about how we engage.
I think there's a nice consilience at the present moment between what we know about so-called grand challenges, the kinds of ways in which disciplinary boxes are not necessarily going to provide us with the kinds of solutions we need to climate change or artificial intelligence or the future of work. What we're learning in the learning science space about what motivates students and what engages them. There's absolutely need for ongoing professional development, but also what I would call institutional development. For me, the number one barrier at RIT is when the answer to any given question is, we do it that way because we've always done it that way. And I see it as my role in our institution to be the one that's attentive to these new models that are emerging around the world so that institutions feel confident enough not simply to repeat the status quo, not to repeat what they've always done. The puzzle of intrinsic motivation, I do believe there's something happening with the ways in which this particular generation interacts with content. It does not make sense when students are carrying around with them on their phone access to any given question. If it can be Googled, you're probably wasting your time showing them a PowerPoint slide. I think you're absolutely right that our challenge is how to retrain faculty, to engage that mediation role. It's one thing to say we need faculty to be coaches and mentors. It's another thing to learn how to do it well. And I'm not sure our knowledge about that mediation actually matches up yet with the learning science. I think we have a ways to go.
Any other questions? So thank you all for the presentations and for answering some very tricky questions. For me, it was an absolute pleasure to be back home because RIT Kosovo for me is home. And it was an absolute pleasure to listen to the presentations and the discussion that was here today. I now invite you all for a brief coffee break because we've already are running a little bit late with the schedule, and come back for the second session. Thanks.
Good morning once more. Thank you for coming back for the second part of this day and this conference. After this short coffee break, during which I really hope you took the time to network and also discuss about everything that we heard in the first part of the day, we come back to localize a little bit the discussions. We want to hear what are the best practices and what do we encounter on a daily basis when it comes to research in undergraduate studies in Kosovo and the region. And that's why we have the session which is titled Conducting Research in Undergraduate Studies, Experiences from Universities in the Region. And today, I'll start with presenting myself. I'm Djarta Holaj, an alumni of RIT Kosovo, AUK, and I have the distinct honor to have in the panel with me, starting with, and I'll invite all of you to join me on this side of auditorium, whether you like it or not, it's my decision to do so. So we'll start with Dr. Natalia Popovska, Assistant Professor, Institute of National History, Skopje, Republic of North Macedonia. Please join us on stage. Dr. Mirka Kotori, Assistant Professor, Head of Economics Department, Faculty of Economics, University of Pristina. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Lorena Pinal and Dr. Julie Colgini, RITK, AUK. Yes, as I said, it's my rule, so please join us on stage. It will be a pleasure. Professor? Okay, it's your decision, no problem. I totally respect it. And I need to make an announcement. We were supposed to have a speaker, a fellow AUK alumni, RITK, Mr. Blendi Hasai, currently a researcher at Gap Institute, who unfortunately cannot join us today because he is sick. This spring is not being very pleasant for most of us, but we really wish him well and hope we'll have him in future meetings. Without further ado, as I mentioned previously, the idea is to take everything we've heard in the first part and see what do we face on a regular basis in Kosovo and the region. We do understand, me coming, although I still like to say from a recent academic experience, it's almost 7 years now that I graduated from RITK, AUK, and I must be frank here to say that I was very, very jealous of the generation that came after us because they started with the honor projects, and that is when research became part of their academic life. Not that we didn't have it, but maybe not as structured as they did after us. And I believe that there are many benefits to it, but to dig further into that, I'll leave the floor to the first speaker for the day, Dr. Natalia Popovska. She will deliver her presentation on undergraduate studies research in Republic of North Macedonia, and let's say, focusing a little bit on the legal framework and the praxis. And without further ado, I'll leave the floor to you.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored to be present at this forum today, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk about this very important topic. At the beginning, I would like to emphasize that I'm working in a research institution that is part of the University of St. Cyril and Methodius in Skopje, and I'm not directly involved with the undergraduate students, but working with MA and PhD students, I am very aware of the level of readiness for research of the students who continue their studies in the Institute of National History. Slide number 2. For this occasion, I will briefly refer to the legal framework of the Republic of North Macedonia, the existing strategic documents and laws dealing with scientific research in education, being National Strategy of Education, Law and Education, Law and Scientific Research Work. The discussion only conveys the parts and legal articles which are related to the topic and offers an insight in the degree of the regulation adequacy to the needs enabling research work with students. I will try as briefly as possible to explain my observations in line with the main goals of this gathering. In general, the past decade, the higher education system had too many regulations and had too many changes of the regulations that reflects the autonomy of university as a result. Still, there is a strong concentration of decision-making power in the management structures. The participation of students in the work of university was more nominal and formal. In that sense, their approach to the general information about possibilities to get involved in the work of the university, as well as in a scientific research work or project led by their professors, was not at a satisfactory level. But I would like to emphasize that the last 2 years the situation is changing on better due to the new law on education and the new national strategy on education. The national strategy on education envisions and supports research and innovation, increasing the efficiency of utilization of financial resources for research and innovation, scientific research in line with modern technology development needs, and enhancing research infrastructure. Slide number 4. The law on higher education, the chapter on higher education goals, Article 4 contains the general provisions for scientific and research work, which implies raising the general educational and scientific research level creation, protection and transfer of scientific, professional and artistic knowledge and skills, development of science, financial support for safe and continuous development of the educational, scientific and research process, enabling and promoting the mobility of the members of academic community and international scientific and research cooperation. The Article 19, which determines the occupation of the university, according to which the main activity of the university is to educate students and develop the science, profiling, scientific research and their financial support, cooperation with universities in the country and abroad, mobility policy for students and professors. The law on scientific research is from 2008, and it regulates, it's pretty old, and it regulates the relations in the sphere of scientific research and international cooperation in the area of transfer of knowledge, research, training, and application. The law on scientific research is focused on providing scientific and research infrastructure such as laboratories, experimental stations, innovation centers, computer centers, scientific equipment, libraries, archives, published documentation, as well as everything else that contributes to the scientific research. But the content of this law mostly emphasizes the procedures for engagement and employment of scientists and university professors in the science and research and educational institutions. This law does not cover students, but only employees and professors in educational, research, and scientific institutions. We expect soon a new draft for a new law and public debate upon it. And the academic community is ready to take part in the creation of the final version of the law and will give impact with suggestions. I'm sure that the academic community will contribute in improving the situation of engaging students in the research work. Maybe all these provisions of the law are not enough or not good enough, but I find that is a good starting point. These documents are obligatory to all accredited universities in the Republic of North Macedonia. For this discussion, I'm focusing on the situation of the University of St. Cyril and Methodius. I must say that in practice, things are going in a good direction. I come from the field of humanities, but I will illustrate my optimism with examples from the field of humanities, as well as examples from the other faculties of UKIM. First of all, I would like to mention that until a few years ago, the students finished their studies by passing the last exam. But a compulsory graduate thesis has been introduced again. The graduate thesis should represent the original work of the student. Through the thesis, a student shows the ability for analytical thinking and for independent research in which she will creatively deal with a topic or problem. Therefore, they should include work with a structure of research paper. There are two ways to fulfill the obligation. The student chooses a topic themselves, or the mentor gives the subject within a certain project, which is current at the moment and which is managed by the mentor. The student is obliged to support the theoretical basis with a minimum of 10 bibliographic units. There is also a small part to be done under controlled conditions. The protocol for implementing methodology and a basic insight for analysis are given to the student. The student is obliged to devise the structure of the graduate paper and write it to make the analysis, discussion, and conclusion on their own. Within the project, this paper is used for checking other results and for valorizing the methodology itself, because the working process is on a smaller sample. Preliminary results are obtained, and it helps the weaknesses to be noticed and to improve the project as a whole. The benefit that students have indeed, they completely pass the path of creation of scientific work from hypothesis to results. They don't waste time by fixing the research area and by determining the methodology. In brief, they have complete research design. The problem is that not all students are equally ready to meet standards of this type of research. Many of them give up and go to another, simpler way of designing a graduate thesis, a descriptive approach to a particular topic without original research. However, in this way, mentors insist on even minimal research, interview, case study, or questionnaire. I choose interesting examples from different faculties. At the Department of English Language and Literature, at the Faculty of Philology, currently they have the project Transcription and Perception of English Voices in Macedonian Language, and students are involved in this. Another example is a student philological conference titled How Are You? The conference is for students from the 3rd and 4th year of the Faculty of Philology and the Faculty of Philosophy, regardless of their study group, and those who graduated the previous year. The conference is conceived as an opportunity for students to present their independent research in the field of language, literature, translation and interpretation, cultural studies, etc., which are related to the Macedonian language, literature and culture. Then a scientific gathering of young Macedonian language specialists. This is a project for last year of study. Then students' scientific journals are very popular. There is one student e-journal in medias res, in which the students have the opportunity to publish their work created during the studies. The text can be theoretical, academic papers, essays, reviews. This is from the Faculty of Philosophy. Another student journal, the international journal entitled as Axios, includes topics of archaeology, history of art and cultural heritage. The journal aims to encourage the research activity of students who are interested in the cultural development of human civilization and through the centuries, to encourage their mutual cooperation and to be a medium through which they will be able to publish their first scientific considerations. Faculty of Security. Students are involved in the project Composite Comparative Studies in the UE from the FP7 program. Technical faculties are equipped with laboratories. Last 2 years, 22 laboratories have been accredited. The example from examples from technical universities, natural science and engineering are very inspiring. Faculty of Natural Science and Mathematics. Students are very active in the forensic laboratory in the Department of Forensic Physics Study. A forensics laboratory was established for students' exercises, but also for application tests. The union at the same faculty, Union of Students at the Faculty of Natural Science and Mathematics, is they lead the scientific manifestation Primitiada, which is attended by students from natural science and mathematics studies from the region. And students participate in sport competitions and in the scientific part of the gathering, and they present scientific research papers in the fields of mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, geography, and computer science. Faculty of Computer Science and Engineering. Research methodology for computer science is established as a subject for the first years of study, with the main goal being for students to understand the principles of research work, to have knowledge for identifying possible scientific research questions, as well as to have basic knowledge of the course of the scientific research process. Student Conference, Energy Efficiency and Sustainable Development for the students of the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Information Technologies, has the goal to unite students, academics and companies dealing with the energy efficiency and sustainable development in order to enable scientific research work. Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, Project Hub Impact 2019. This is very interesting project, and the promotion of this the promotion of this project is on 15th of of May this year. And the students will represent their research process and also their products on this manifestation. And there are more examples from the Faculty of Pharmacy, Medicine, and other faculties, but I will respect the time for presentation. To conclude, I realized that the research during undergraduate studies is on the rise. Of course, it depends of the interest of the students themselves and the enthusiasm of the professors. According to this small research, we can see professors sincerely are willing to work with students and help them to build their capacities. This is because they are very much aware that the research experience allows students to better understand published works, learn to balance collaborative and individual work, determine their area of interest, or to give them a start point to build their careers as researchers. Students are also curious and creative and willing to get involved in projects with their professors. And through these examples, we can see that even they themselves create conditions to develop their own scientific research facilities. Much more has to be done, but I find this gathering is very inspirative for further discussion upon this topic in our countries and for regional connection and cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Poklovska. We just need to make clear that we will proceed same as with the first panel. So first we'll deliver the presentations and then we'll follow up with a session for questions and answers. So whoever might have a question, please note it down and then we'll make sure that you can address it to Dr. Poklovska. Thank you for actually providing an overview of the legal framework in the Republic of North Macedonia and how much enabling is it for conducting research in undergraduate studies. Would really love to see a similar presentation for Kosovo and see where we stand. And maybe we can take that as a note for a future conference or a future meeting. But to drive a parallel between the importance of conducting research in undergraduate studies and how that actually relates to economic courses, we do have today with us Dr. Kotori. She will deliver a presentation on integrating research and economic courses at the University of Pristina. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Well, I'm Rika Kotori, for those who don't know me, and I teach both at the University of Pristina and the RITK Kosovo. So I'm going to share my experiences with the UP students, and then if I see it important, relevant, then I'll also discuss my experiences with RITK students. And the reason for that is that I have been I have succeeded better in integrating research into teaching at RITK because probably of the smaller classes that I have here. Because at the UP, sometimes I do have 200 students within a class, so it's quite difficult to manage it as a process. So yes, I'm going to talk about, I had a feeling this is not on. Okay, I'm going to talk very quickly about the importance of integrating research. So, yes, okay. Okay, so the outline of the presentation. I'm going to talk about the importance, meaning the benefits for students, but also for professors or lecturers. I'm going to discuss briefly about the existing formal system of integrating research into teaching at the University of Pristina, and then I'll share my experiences, and these I'll explain through two mechanisms. In some courses, and I've taken one to illustrate it, I do only what is called in the literature one-way knowledge transfer, and then in other courses I do what is called a two-way knowledge transfer. And to be honest, it was only these last days that I did some literature review on the importance of integrating research into teaching. And because I did do this as a process of knowledge transfer, but I never actually looked at what researchers say about it and what they suggest about how it should be done, etc., etc. So I did this for one reason. When I studied, while studying, I actually started working. First, I did some very simple study work. I did have economic incentives, meaning I was paid for that, although it was very low pay, but still I did get some money. But the issue there was that I realized that just getting or being thrown to you theory and theory and theory, and without having a chance to link it to practice, is going to be simply too abstract. And it's not that you can really understand theory and then go out there and by yourself just put it into practice. So when I got this job, this very simple one, I did get involved in different research projects, and I really had the chance to not fully, but better understand why I'm being taught certain theories. I have studied economics, so the theories that I had to learn in order to pass the exams were too abstract for me. So when I did the work, I said, okay, now I understand why I had to learn this one. Now I understand why I had to learn what monopolies are. But apart from that, just abstract theory. So thinking about myself and then my personal experience and thinking about needing a bridge between theory and practice, I said, okay, I'm going to introduce something in my courses to the students so that they can, while studying and preparing for the exams, they get a chance to also provide some research and link it with the theory that they are being taught during the course, so that in the end they maybe manage to better develop their research skills that are necessary for performing a job properly. So just some of the benefits or the importance of integrating research is that, first of all, it provides access to the students, access to new knowledge, and sometimes, I will explain later, access to country-specific knowledge as well, and this enhances the knowledge of the students. Also, it helps them improve the understanding of the theory that they have access to during the lectures, improve their critical thinking, problem-solving skills. But what's very interesting is that when I see students' projects, I just realize how creative they are. So it actually improves, enhances their creativity as well. And that is what makes them really feel like they have really achieved something, and they become more knowledgeable, etc. And yes, they do learn about the research skills, and they improve their research skills. And also, I managed to improve my quality of teaching, because some of the researches that they provide, the papers that they present and they submit, I use their case studies in my lectures. So I do update my lectures based on students' researches. So it's quite interesting for me as well. So at the University of Pristina, we do have a regulation on integrating research into teaching, but that starts and ends with a bachelor thesis. That's the original work of the students. It's something similar to the capstone project that we do here at RITK. And I have been involved in certain capstone projects of our students here at RITK, mostly when they have to do their econometrics part of the projects. So apart from that, the University of Pristina does not really have a regulation on how to integrate research into teaching in certain courses or in the courses themselves. So there is no formally regulated mechanism, no formally specified principles. It's all left to the discretion of the professor. So I'm actually, what I'm doing in my courses is not that I follow a formal system of integrating a formal mechanism. I just do it because I felt it's important, and I just identified my own mechanism of transferring knowledge to the students. So the first example is the one-way knowledge transfer. This, according to Deck and Wolf, is also referred to as research-led teaching. This is simply feeding new research knowledge into the lectures and tutorials. So the students are only serve as an audience, but they don't really participate in the research. They just get access to new knowledge, new empirical results, etc. So it benefits the students' learning, but it's not that I get something in return from the students. So I do not expect anything in return. And for this, I've chosen the course Population Economics. One of the topics there was on migration, and since I have a PhD on migration economics and I have been working in that field, doing certain research projects in that field since 2007, I thought it quite important that I share my research work with the students. So in this regard, the rationale actually for this was that I wanted to provide my students with access to new knowledge, but also country-specific knowledge when it comes to research on migration. So I wanted to tell them and explain how we behave in terms of migration. So what are the characteristics of migration behavior among the Kosovan population? And as a process, what I do here is simply I provide students, sometimes my research work is published, so they have to pay for access to such research. So I use my older drafts and I share them with the students. And then I just simply post it on the system, or I send it to them via email. And then the students have to study that just like they study the books, etc. So they study that, and then we discuss the topics, meaning we discuss the empirical results and all that. And yes, they learn from it, about it, through it, and then they have to pass the exam. So I do add questions to the final exam relating to the topic. So that's a way for me to make sure that they really did study it and understand it, and not just present it and not just offer it. The other example I've chosen is the two-way knowledge transfer, the other mechanism, and this was referred to as the research-based learning in the literature. So here the students have to conduct their own research, so they do their, what we call in class, a mini research project, and I see here some of my econometrics class students who have actually been involved in such many research projects. And I see someone who's going to enroll on one of my courses and will be doing that very soon. So the results of the research, so when they do their mini project, then the results of that research are presented, and then later, if I consider important and relevant, as I said in the beginning, I add that to my lecture notes, etc., and then I discuss it with future student generations. And this, as I said, is mutually beneficial because students get to learn something, and then I get something in return from them, which is some research that is used for teaching in the future. So the course is Intermediate Microeconomics, and I teach this both at the University of Pristina and the RITK. So here I have, I've added here the exact question of the paper, which says, critically evaluate whether any economic sector in Kosovo is behaving oligopolistically, meaning they had to critically analyze oligopolies within the economy of the Republic of Kosovo. And then they have to explain the answer using graphs and the underlying economic meanings. So the rationale here was to provide students with an opportunity to develop their practical research skills. And when I say this, I mean the different methodologies, the principles, research ethics, and they have to do a training on this as well, etc. And yes, improve their writing skills as well. So it's a very interesting way of really making sure, or actually evaluating your own self. Did you really understand the theory that you have been taught? That's a very good way to do that. So the process of how this is performed is that the students first, of course, are provided with the tools and principles of intermediate micro with all the theories necessary. Next, they have to critically analyze and discuss research in the field, and also in 1 or 2 tutorials, depending on how fast they actually absorb the knowledge about research methodologies. If I see it necessary, or if both me and the students see it necessary, we add an extra tutorial on how to really do that research. In certain cases, we prepare, for example, in this case, they had to analyze this by also interviewing government representatives, representatives of companies, of non-governmental organizations, business associations, as well as customers. So they really had to go out there and interview people. So when you do this, they had to use a semi-structured questionnaire. And in order to prepare that semi-structured questionnaire, it's not enough if you just know the theory. So what I do is that during tutorials, we sit together and then we design the semi-structured questionnaires. And as you can see, there are different institutions that have to be interviewed. You cannot use, and different groups, you cannot use the same semi-structured questionnaire for government and for customers. So I try to mentor them while designing the questionnaire and try to make sure that it's still their original work and creative work, not mine. So once we design that, then I give some instructions on how to conduct interviews, what to be careful with, and then they have to do a training on ethics, etc., on research ethics when you have to deal with people, because you're not allowed to disclose personal information. So you need to keep anonymity, and then I teach how that is done and the whole process. And yes, they go out there, they do their critical literature review, they use their questionnaires to interview the people, then they critically analyze the results of their interviews and submit the paper, which is in the end graded. And once I get the papers, grade them. Some of the papers, paperwork, research, I use as case studies for my future lectures, for future generations. And yes, some concluding remarks and recommendations. It's quite, so integrating research into teaching, I would say, is a must, and not something we should just leave at the level of recommendation. I think it's a must, and it's quite important because students really benefit from that. But there are also ways professors can benefit from students' research, from that cooperation. And yes, in order to make this happen, as lecturers or professors, we need to be actively involved in research, because if you're not involved, there's nothing you can actually share with the students. Or you can do other people's research, of course, but it's easier if you have your own work, your original work, because it's more interesting for the students as well. And yes, we need to be ready to cooperate. And when I say ready to cooperate, we need to be ready to also respond to emails and provide extra office hours whenever the students need them, and not just the office hours we have there on the door. Yes, students need to have also the capacity to conduct research and to absorb it, but here I think the professors can do a lot while by actually mentoring them in research methodologies. And as for the University of Pristina, I can only speak, of course, for the Faculty of Economy there, because I'm the head of the Economics department. I would actually strongly recommend that we sit together and prepare, write, draft a regulation on how to better or try to integrate teaching, research into teaching and the different courses, and not leave it only for the final thesis or the bachelor thesis that the students have to submit before graduation, before graduating. So this is my whole presentation. I hope I'm not bored some of you who have actually gone through this before. So I'm open for questions once we are done with the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Katori, for a very interesting presentation. There was something which was emphasized many times throughout the presentation, that is that conducting research in undergraduate studies is a two-way street, meaning it is a very rewarding experience for the students, and that is something that you will see especially later on in life, but it's also highly beneficial for professors because it helps them improve the quality of teaching. For that matter, I guess this experience is very timely and very important, and I really hope to see more of it coming in the future. However, for all of this to happen, there must be a starting point, and that is when the students meet for the first time or are exposed to the opportunity to conduct research. To discuss more on that, we have Dr. Lorena Pinel and Dr. Julie Colgini, who will deliver a presentation on confusions, concepts, clarity, the anatomy of research for first-year undergraduates, which will shed a light on how undergraduate first-year writing-intensive courses can present various challenges for both the learner and the course facilitator, although the various pedagogical methods need to be aligned with the rigorous student learning objectives. They say flexibility is essential in order for meaningful learning to transpire. Without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just give us a minute to get organized. I have a broken arm, so I can't click. So Julie will do the clicking. Thank you. Right. Okay. Thank you for hanging around. And it's nice to see you, and thank you for that lovely introduction. I didn't recognize myself. All right. Okay. This is what we intended to cover today. Please do not panic. We'll zoom through some of it. We will eliminate others, but we'll make our points nonetheless. I have to say that Julie is really the backbone of first year, first semester writing and research. So most of it is generated from her. All right, today in our short presentation, we recognize that we are probably preaching to the converted. Most of you have probably done this before. You know what has to get done. You know what happens. So what we're doing today will be familiar to most of you. So our presentation will be essentially informational. We will explain, or we will attempt to explain our process. By ours I mean at RITK, our process of introducing research to first year, first semester students, as well as illustrating some of the obstacles that we encounter along the road. Most universities, and you probably know all this, require at least one first year writing class, at least one. Unfortunately, because of curriculum pressures and curriculum congestion, one writing course is what most students get. Sad, but that's a reality. Consequently, the first year writing class, it's crucial, absolutely crucial. It's critical and it is packed It has bags and bags and bags of stuff that the students have to learn. And for example, our typical writing seminar, again for first semester, first year students, involves all of this. And you can see yourself reading, comprehension, writing, grammar, linguistics, cross-cultural understanding, peer critique, you name it, and introductory research techniques or methods are just a very small part of this writing course. If a typical semester, and I'm guessing here, estimating, if a typical semester is 14 weeks long, like ours, I think, is it 14? Yep. And we meet 3 hours a week, then all we have is approximately 42 hours, not long at all, to pack all this in. And introducing research methods is only one component of this demanding menu. So probably we've got less than 8 hours in a semester to dedicate to introduce students to research. Right. We titled our presentation Confusion, Concepts, and Clarity, because this is really how it starts. It starts with confusion. On a good year, we maybe have 100 brand new students who show up in the fall semester, first years, and they are full of promise and full of vision and full of excitement. And they really are, and it's good and it's inspiring and we like it. But to them, research is an alien concept. Well, research, what are you talking about? Never heard of it. Why? Of course not. Well, why should they? In many regions in this area, they don't do research. They're just out of high school. Many of them have never written a research essay before, nor do they understand what it is or what it looks like, or why research is a necessary component of university life. Well, we do research, but don't you give us the research? Isn't the research in the library? What do you mean? We have to do it? So, it begins with confusion. And our job, Julie and I, is to transform that confusion into something stimulating, something inspiring, something challenging. Too often research is framed as an intimidating and an untouchable enterprise. Oh, research, that's for the highly intellectual, the academically driven professional or the career scientist. Miss, I'm a first year student, you know, it's not for me. Our job is to reframe that myth and introduce research as a sort of democratic, multi-leveled type of conversation among scholars of all ranges of expertise and backgrounds. It's a conversation. We persuade our first-year students that they are entitled to join this conversation. Why not? Join it. Consider research as a forum for discussion, for talk, for conversation, for enlightenment, for knowledge, for argument and debate, evidence, proof, and ultimately, perhaps, truth. We don't know. Our students, as thinking, sentient, and you said they're curious individuals. They already have full membership. You walk in this door at RITK, you have full membership to join this research conversation. They can add to this narrative of human endeavor and discovery. And why not? Personally, this is just my style, I do not shy away from superlatives with the first semester students. I call them scholars. I call them academics. When they work in groups, they're in think tanks. And that's really how they like it. They start calling themselves scholars. They start calling themselves academics. In our think tank, we worked out the economics of the China trade policy. And I think that's great. Why not? Okay. Now this then results in clarity. We get more confident, more curious first-year students, and many of whom are eager to try this research gig. What is it? I like it. I'll join it. How's my time? Am I okay? All right. Just 1 minute or 30 seconds on information literacy. This is one of these new sexy terms that come up all the time. First-year students will be required to refer to databases, to journals, to volumes, to articles, and so on. For many of them, this terminology is meaningless. What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. They cannot even conceptualize what I mean when I say, well, refer to this volume of this date in this journal. So how do we overcome that this is what we do? We show them. We show them the physical, material artifact. This is a volume of essays. This is what a journal looks like. This is what an article looks like. Eventually, and additionally, all the essays, articles, and information, as you know, will then be consolidated electronically in databases. And the students quickly understand that a database is just like a library shelf with books on it. That's all it is. And it becomes, there's a library shelf in the background, and it becomes this database. So everything else is done, and then they're starting to write a research essay, and of course they're going to need a topic. Well, miss, tell me what I should write about. Oh, find it yourself. Well, what should I write about? So they've got a more concrete grasp of concepts and terminology. They now have to put this into practice. The selection of the topic for the first research essay is crucial. Crucial. And I can't stress that strongly enough, especially with students. And the students, they have a wide range from which they can choose. They may engage in topics from history, from philosophy, literature, social sciences, and so on. The world is their oyster. They can choose with some prohibitions, but I'll get there. I may or may not address that. So they are strongly encouraged to write on a topic that they are curious about, that they want to develop, or they feel strongly about. And Julie, when we get to Julie's bit, she'll expand on this, but we throw the kitchen sink at them. We throw in every possible idea and opportunity. They write on Nietzsche, and I'm talking about first semester, first-year students. They write on Nietzsche, Freud, existentialism, linguistics, literature. I even had students write on the second law of thermodynamics and chaos theory. Go for it. But here is an obstacle that we do encounter with topic selection. The topic selections the students make, they're frequently derivative. They just, this sounds good, so let me choose that. They tend to get repetitive. Well, 10 million people have written on this subject, so it must be a good subject to write about, so it gets repetitive. And sometimes, as in academics like us as well, it's just boring. The topics are boring, or they don't add anything of significance to the field or to the discipline. So we prod, we entice, we provoke and we expect them to come up with something decent to write on. And again, Julie will develop this a bit more, and she's clicking things to show you. Let's see. Time. Should I let Julie? All right, I'm just going to add a few other bits and then let Julie take over. In fact, I might just let you take over now, Julie. Would that be okay? All right, I'm passing it on to Julie for other bits of enlightenment. Right, do you need me to click? Can you click? I can click with my left hand.
Okay. Hello. Okay. So in all of the classes that the two of us teach and quite a few other instructors here, we try to put the students at the center. So that is why this slide has some students at the center. Now in this slide we have a combination of a first-year student and a fourth-year student. So it's not just first-year students. Many times we encounter, we keep all of the years in mind in the various activities that we give to these students. So let me see, these usually don't work from, oh, whoa, worked this time. So for the various writing activities that they do, the various writing projects, research papers, research essays that they do, we try to put the annotated bibliography center stage, where once they've found a topic that engages them, now sometimes they're given, in some classes with some assignments, they're given more freedom than others. But there has to be a component in the topic that they are writing about that engages them. It might not be 100% engagement, but maybe some element where the student can look at that topic and say, okay, there's some element of it that resonates with me, the writer. If the topic does not resonate with them, it's going to be beyond torture to write, and from the instructor's perspective, it's going to also be torture to read. So getting the students to understand what sorts of topics are appropriate for academic writing and what ones are not can sometimes be a challenge, but that's part of the learning of what is academia. So they have their topic that's relatively engaging for them, right? Then what they do is, well, then they have to start researching it. And in terms of researching it, well, we have access to the RIT Wallace Library. So that's many times where we send them. So instead of Googling their topic, which many of them probably did before they came to class, and they're probably many of them doing in class, right? Instead of Googling it, we tell them, well, why not Wally it? And Wally has this amazing, here's Wally again, the RIT Wallace Library. It has all of these amazing databases in it. And so what they can do is, instead of going to Google or whatever search engine they're used to, just go to this link and enter whatever is on the top of their mind in terms of, so it's kind of a brainstorm in terms of the elements that I encourage them to enter into that box there. Some of them, they'll be lucky, some of them they won't be so lucky, but just to explore the RIT Wallace Library and see what it has to offer. They can, here we have summon, so they summon their topic, right? But they can also go to the individual databases for first-year students, particularly for their first research project, knowing which databases to go to. Well, I have a list that I give them, but I tell them, well, why don't you just summon it, see what you get.
Can I just mention something about this? Again, another one of the obstacles we get is at this summon point, this is where students get frustrated and they become impatient because they want things to be summed up by magic. They put it in a heart and magically it all appears. But it requires patience and trying again with the word combinations. Correct, Julie?
Exactly. So So then in some cases, well, let's see, semiotics, that's a topic that's talked about in both of our courses, depending upon the particular semester. So then we, enter that in. Many times this is done in class. Sometimes also our academic support center tutors do this as well. But here we have, again, information literacy. Okay. So they type in their elements of information literacy. They have their topic there, and they have a wealth of resources to choose from. So then they have to figure out, okay, which ones are more relevant than others. So then, I tell them, well, just, make sure that you have full text online checked. And if you don't want to dive in to the deep end of the pool, maybe try checking journal articles where you might have 20 pages to read attempt to get through, right? But those at least usually have a summary or an abstract there that you can read to figure out how relevant that source is. Mm-hmm. So then this is one research article that might work for them, and this is kind of how they figure out what databases work, rather than just give them a whole bunch of information and say, okay, I hope you understand it, here you go. I hope you understand what each and every one of these individual databases has to offer. Well, why not just let them explore and figure out some of it on their own?
Back to that previous slide. So once students have established their topic, they will then get this long, long list of possible articles to use. Sometimes hundreds. And they say, well, what do I do with all this? You know, which one will I use? So we have to narrow them down, narrow them down, narrow them down. And I do, and I think you do as well, Julie, the title gives you a clue. Look at the title, that might help you and decide, is this relevant? And then, if it's not the title, go to the abstract. Most of them have little abstracts, the essays. Does this help you? So it's a process of elimination. That doesn't, I don't need this, don't need that, don't need that. And you come to a more dense but shorter list.
So then they have some research articles to consider, right? They have some experience with what databases might work and which ones might not. Because now our students, they write on they write on economics. What topics have they not explored over the previous years, right? So very interdisciplinary, right? So there's, yes, I took some courses as an undergraduate in economics, but, if they bring a paper to me, a research paper that talks about economics, I'm very likely will say, well, why don't you go and bring that article to some experts that we have on campus here in economics and see what they have to say about it. So then they have a collection of sources that they think are relevant to their paper. They probably have a tentative thesis by now, and so they can start working on the annotated bibliography. The annotated bibliography, if you ask me, it is essential to any successful research project. After they've done the reading of all of these different, academic peer-reviewed journals, some ebooks, whatever is available to them within the RIT Wallace Library, amongst other sources as well. Then they have, once they've done their homework, so to speak, once they've read these articles, that's them entering into the conversation or attempting to get their toes wet, so to speak. And then, the annotated bibliographies I end up with from first year writing students first semester, by the end, after a few revisions, they're quite good. So usually what I do is I give them an example of an annotated bibliography, some instructions, some a bit more detailed instructions there. So I try not to give them formulas because, then it will not be interesting to read. But I try to give them enough guidelines, and I try not to provide too detailed of an analysis in class because, this is their research project, so they need to explore what is possible. And I'm looking at some students I had both this year and previous years, and yeah, they have earned those smiles.
Can I just add one other thing? Sorry, an obstacle that we sometimes encounter when students attempt to integrate a research article into their own essays is, you know what, we don't need that. What are you going to do? I don't know. This is a universal problem, an existential problem. I don't know. How do we overcome it? Sometimes you get a student who will try and slip in the abstract instead of having read the full article. We attempt to overcome that by saying, all right, if you're going to use this article in your research paper, you will use information from the beginning of the article, the middle of the article, and the end of the article. Because very frequently, they will cite page 1, page 2, and that's it.
And of course, I want to be convinced just by information that is in an abstract, especially the first sentence of the abstract.
Yeah.
I was being facetious, of course. So, now what some of us decided to do is, some of us who have had this activity of an annotated bibliography in our courses for quite some time, we decided to team up and see what we could do in terms of adding some digital tools. So Linda and I, we took some of the students I had in writing seminar. They already had their annotated bibliographies, and they were going to present them in her class. But what they were going to do is they were going to apply the tool Timeline.js. Okay. So here is some of what they produced. Okay. Now, the student who presented this annotated bibliography, this was a first semester, first year student who was very interested in the gig economy, and he himself was part of it. So he was kind of an expert, and I learned quite a bit through his papers. So one of the previous presentations that said that we can learn quite a bit from these students' projects, from their research, yeah, it was quite insightful. Okay. So here we have a timeline. Now what the assignment here was to take their annotated bibliographies and then present them according to, if that document was, had been published in 2001, then they had another source from 2008, another one from 2011, so on and so forth. So they were to explain the history of the evolution of that topic through this timeline of when those materials first became available to the public. And then here's another, this is a snapshot from Timeline.js. And this paper was written on, now this was last year, not this academic year, but the year before that, in an international relations class. The student was very interested in US versus China relations, and so then that's what this had to, this particular annotated bibliography was dealing with. And then this is from this academic year, Me Too movement, sexuality from the female perspective, the male gaze from the female perspective. So some feedback from the students. Now the students weren't given that much time to deal with the digital tool. Many, many hours were spent by our academic support center tutors, the instructors, Skype calls. So many people went above and beyond what was expected of them. But we have some amazing work study students. I'm going to do a call out to DR right now. He's not here, but he was one of our work study students in the Academic Support Center who made sure that all of the students involved in this project knew how to deal with the digital tool. So there is DR right there. Now this is a different workshop. This is for, this was this past semester for a digital tool called Voyant. And there he is. So we have very much, instead of just the students having the instructors as these reservoirs of knowledge, we also try to make sure that they know that they have each other as resources. Studies have been done that they learn just as much, they can learn just as much from each other, and including outside of the classroom, ethically, of course, as they can being in the classroom. So we try to capitalize on that here. So here we have a tutor with some students. And then some of the output. So this is when they were focusing on Wittgenstein. And here is when this was part of another research project. And here they are focusing on various elements that have to do with semiotics and Albanian. Then here we have, now the one thing with some of these digital tools is the only way to capture the information is to do screenshots. So this is a screenshot of a screenshot. So this here is, now Voyant is, it's kind of like introduction to text mining, introduction to corpus linguistics. Okay. It does frequency counts, a word bubble, and so this particular group was working on pigeons and Creoles. Yes. And they also focused on some possible Creole elements within some of the local languages. So in-text citations, works cited page. We spend quite a bit of time in class explaining to them, okay, here's original text, and here's an example of plagiarism, and this is why it is called plagiarism. We give them quite a bit of opportunity to practice paraphrasing. And sometimes a text needs to be paraphrased about, 10 times, but that's okay. It might be the 11th, which is the magic one, right? Then an acceptable paraphrase. So here we have academic integrity is a very important part of the conversation of research. We give them multiple, we make sure that they know about the resources that are available to them. Purdue OWL, the RIT Wallace Library has a citation guide. Now this citation guide changes pretty much every semester. So that means I have to constantly go to it to make sure that I'm in tune with what, where I'm telling students to go. And it provides them with a sample to guide them, APA, MLA. Then they also have quite a few resources in terms of academic integrity, just in case they fell asleep during that part of the class. Okay. Well, that's one of many options, but we focus primarily on MLA. Yeah. But still, we want them to kind of understand what they're feeding into the system. So revision is a major element of the course. There is a text that they are required to read. Some of them read it more in-depthly than others. And we have some amazing tutors that without these tutors, we all would be up even later during the weeknights and weekends. So an amazing team. We don't do it by ourselves. Okay. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Pinel and Dr. Cugini. This was a really interesting presentation, and I think opens the floor for many questions to follow. I think you once more confirmed that the journey of conducting research goes through a really bumpy road. It starts with a lot of uncertainties and clarities, then you get to concepts and you start understanding what you're getting into. You reach a point where you finally know you're headed to something concrete, and then it becomes a very rewarding experience, a product which you're proud of and you take pride in. I really don't want to take more time because we're already over time significantly, but I think it would only be fair if we open the floor for questions and answers before we go to a summary of all discussions from the very early morning until now. So I'll sit and join the panel. I'll open the floor for your questions. I really need to know if this mic is working.
Yes.
Okay. And Professor Colgini and Professor Pinel, I really would love you to join us on this side because the questions would normally be addressed to you. So I'd really appreciate that. Thanks.
Any questions?
Okay. I want to relate my question to the previous speakers as well, and especially to Dr. Hall when he said it would be good to encourage, not just to encourage, but to involve not only the best students. So based on your experiences, do you have an experience on that? And it would be good to maybe discuss it here in general, how to encourage, not how to involve them more, the students who are not the best ones because I know here in RITK we have that problem. Usually the ones which are more involved in the research are the ones who are top students. So yeah, maybe talking something about that.
I think we can take that question and then.
Maybe Dr. Hall wants to start answering your question. Okay. Well, my experience, I would say, is easier because doing that mini research project or being involved in the mini research projects is mandatory. So every student has to be part. Initially, I create knowledge circles in the very beginning of the course. So each knowledge circle consists of some 5, maximum 6 students. And they are supposed to circulate knowledge among them, meaning there are some of them are much better than the others. For example, I have students in 2 different courses at the same time, so I have the same students enrolled on both courses. They might be better, for example, in econometrics, but less good in in intermediate microeconomics. But still, they have to be part of a knowledge circle, and then they benefit from those who are much better than them in that certain course. And since I said in the beginning, since it's mandatory that they participate in the mini research projects, they just have to learn from the others. And during my mentoring, where I also ask the knowledge circle members to come and meet with me in order to discuss, for example, their semi-structured questionnaire, or in econometrics, it's a well-structured questionnaire. They come in, they discuss it, and that's when I try to also ask questions directed to those that I know perform less well academically in that course. So I'm trying to get them involved through extra questions and so on. I want to make sure that everybody is benefiting. But in the end, they all get 1 grade per knowledge circle, meaning I cannot really tell who has been contributing more or less to that mini research project. They get the same grade.
Not really. Can I just make a comment on that? With students who might be struggling, I don't know, maybe sometimes there are some students you just have to let them go. Students join universities for many, many, many reasons, and sometimes they're in universities for all the wrong reasons. So, I don't know. Yes, my friend.
Oh, I have something to contribute here. In my classes, I think it boils down to work ethic. They just have to figure out a way to sit down and do the work. And if they can figure out how to do that, and if I can figure out how to help them do that, I don't necessarily look at them as strong students and weak students, but rather who is willing to do the work. And it's not the most exciting work for all students in all cases, but if they can come out of my class with a little better work ethic, that's a major priority for me. And many of them come with an amazing work ethic to begin with. So.
The question I have, the students, of course, that we have over here in RIT Kosovo, it's ranked really on the top level among the students when I see it in other institutions around the country. But at the same time, at least what I have observed so far, and I've been here for a short period of time, it's kind of the concept of the research and the way we run the classroom and get the student involved in the problem-solving research is very well structured and is a faculty-driven. Faculty define the problem. Faculty is going to give them steps to, they have to take in order to solve the problem. Even on the research aspect, I've seen mostly was done in that way. How can we change that to build the environment that the students be the one to bring the problem? And those are the one that they want to have this concept of the research and they relate to the course that the faculty they're teaching versus us, we give them the assignment.
I think maybe Jim Hall's examples of these radical and innovative universities might be the way to do it. You were talking about the Fulbright University and Station 1. So something like that. We actually do that here. Maybe on a smaller scale. We do lots of presentations, and that's essentially what it is. We're turning over the classroom to the students. We're turning over the lesson to the students. Our academic support center is student-driven. Our workshops are student-driven. So we're already doing that somewhat. Perhaps we should do it more. Kamal, I don't know if that answered your question. There's a colleague here who's desperate to ask something.
Just to add to this, to the answer to this question quickly, whenever I had students who were working on 4 different research institutes, once I had a student who was working here at the RITK Energy Institute, and another time I had a student who was working for, I think, UNICEF, and they were both involved in empirical research projects in their work. So they had questions or issues at work, and they took them to class, and then we discussed it and found solutions to those problems. But apart from that, I cannot recall that I had students who came up with an issue and they asked for solving that issue during class or tutorial.
Last semester and this semester, I had students come to me and propose topics, and I said, okay, so what's your research question? And so we do have students who are doing this. And then those students are then seen by the other students, and so it's the students leading the students.
This mainly focus on you. I liked your presentation. I admire your efforts as a teacher. But in your presentation, like in most of presentations here, except for Professor Zargari and Holland, the word publication was missing. And I know why. Professors don't publish here in this part of the world, or publish suspiciously. And I wanted to ask you, what efforts have you put to give a real meaning to students' research, like publication or conference presentation? But I'm not talking about publications in CMDO and all those doubtful databases, article data. I'm talking about Sage or Wiley or Elsevier or Taylor and Francis. How? Because without publication, that research would be as abstract as the theories that you were complaining to be. At least in engineering, they run for patents, they write codes, other people can use them. But if a research is not published or patented or used by others, it didn't happen.
Okay, thank you for your question. Maybe I didn't emphasize it enough, but I mentioned that some of my empirical research, which is published, one of them is, I'll just name one of them, is published in the Journal of Eastern European Economics, which is a very good journal, and it's quite, we can discuss about it. You can check the impact factor. No, it's not a fake database. Definitely not. You should better check. You should verify again. It's a very strong one, and it's very difficult to get published in that journal. So I will just ignore this personal insult, but we can verify it, and there's no issue with verification because it's very straightforward, a very straightforward process. Everything is online and you can check it. If you're referring to the Bell list, then I am not going to discuss on that because I have never even tried to publish in those journals. I apologize, but I'm not one of those people who you were referring to previously. And as I said, some of my research cannot be accessed free of charge. You have to pay for that. And because of that, I said in my presentation, I usually use a previous draft, a draft before publication, and that's what I share with my students. But in addition to all this, to sharing my research and all that, I also directly teach students how to really conduct research, meaning I give them specific knowledge with regard to conducting empirical research. And if given the time limit we have, I wouldn't like to get into details. However, during the break or another time, I can give you my email and we can discuss, and I'll give you all the details about how I teach them to go from A to Z with regard to empirical research, including sampling methodology, randomness, representativeness, questionnaire design, issues with anonymity, data analysis, data cleaning, data analysis, all the different econometrics techniques that are used given the data structure and all that. Any detail you need, you can just email me. As for the Eastern European Journal of Economics, I kindly ask you to just Google and check online about the seriousness and the impact factor of that journal. That is just one of the journals where I have published so far. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to say, this past academic year, I had students looking at research projects, the senior capstones that had been presented last academic year, and integrating that research into, they were students I had this year, first year students, taking the findings from the capstones from last year and trying to push them forward. So, those findings from these documents that might not be in some of the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals out there, what the students are doing here is being heard by other students, and other students are taking those ideas and moving them forward.
My question was, how are we integrating research with students into publication? Is it bringing students with yourself or elevate students at publishable level, or making them write non-thesis at a publishable level, or at least conference presentation?
Can I? Now let me add, and one thing. Well, I exactly understand the point that you have, in form of, the application and then, of course, the result and the publication. Now, I can say over here, the works of our students has been compiled together in form of a book, and that has been published and is being distributed, not only over here in Kosovo, outside the Kosovo, and that was the most recently that happened. In addition, other faculty that, as I said, I've been here for a short period of time. I have 14 full-time faculty. This year, we have 2 books published, and the books that they were published was not with one of these Mickey Mouse publisher, with one of the top publisher in the countries has published, which only they use the research-based books. It's not a textbook, therefore, is all application is for the individual author in the field to use it. Yes, it's not the number that we like to be. We like every single individual to be at that level, but it's going to take time to get there. It does require the certain resources that's not available. Therefore, it's going on over here, at least in RIT Kosovo. It's happening, it's going on, and the product of that is available.
Thank you very much. Before we continue, I really need to ask, do we have permission for another 5 minutes? Because I think we have another question and another question coming from the other side, and then we can wrap it. Thank you.
Yeah, my point is, because I work with honor students, and I know that's not that much. There are like 11 students this year in the generation, but still that means they go through a research project. They work, they start in the fall, and tomorrow actually they're presenting their projects, and it's related to your question. So, and their work, which is like really an excellent work, is published at the RIT main library, so it's accessed freely. I mean, they're still undergrad students, which means after 2-3 years they get back to their work and they see, how interesting is what they've done. Unfortunately, Blendi Hasa is not here because he was sick, and that's why we invited him. And his honors project, so his BA thesis, has been downloaded by more than 3,000 times. So it has more than 3,000 downloads, and I think that's quite a lot for an undergrad students to get back 2 or 3 years after what he's done and see, wow, that was really something that I worked on. So yeah, we do that. So we have a lot of published work out there of our undergrad students, but at the same time, we also work with our own students and we publish together. Now, the student that I'm working on, she's an alumni. She graduated, but just to make a point, in June we have a conference at London School of Economics together, and we're going to present a paper that we work together. She's not a student anymore, she's an alumni, but still, we bridged our relationship in the undergrad studies. So yeah, maybe that's not a lot, but we're trying to integrate that as much as possible. Thank you. Yeah.
Immediately in the defense movement. I was asking to see how it happens and how professors try to do that. It was not an attack.
I apologize. I need to say something. I'm sorry.
On the same,
yeah,
right? Okay.
Well, no, I just...
Because we've had someone else...
It's the same thing, but I want to clarify with my friends. I apologize. The Redbone worked and studied in the University of Kentucky, so I know his background and preparation. Now, the reason that I am here is actually because you're doing it is an infancy stage. So you have begun research here. That's why I brought what we had to this forum. The question that my friend had was a question, was not an objection. So I did not want that to be translated in a negative way. The question was that the publication is a sign of end type of research or presentation or just in the journals relative. We are not here to judge, make judgment on the quality of journals. It is on the internet. Everybody knows it. So I am here only because the topic was inclusion of research in undergraduate curriculum, was not to providing publications at this time. Hopefully, if you invite us next year or in the future, the forum will be on what do we do with the result of research. So therefore, you are, I believe, on your way to go there. So I did not present RIT type research. I just was showing that how that culminates into a better and higher way. So I just wanted to say that you are at the beginning, the same as us. We are at the beginning in Kentucky. So I like what I saw, and hopefully your interim president will continue and you will be publishing in the future. And thank you for having us here. Okay.
Our pleasure. I think it's no? Thank you very much. The fact that we are significantly overdue as far as timing is concerned means that we really need similar fora to take place more often. I think this is a note for the organizers, which is also a compliment. Thank you for giving the space to discuss this topic, and hopefully we'll have more similar meetings in the future. Dr. Popovska, Dr. Kotori, Dr. Colgini, and Dr. Pinelli, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me back to my alma mater, but before we let you go on for a cocktail, we need to have a summary of the discussions. And that's why I'll invite you to join us in the floor, and then I hope we take the time also to discuss further everything that we didn't have sufficient time to do so. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your patience to continue to stay here. So my name is Professor Linda Ziberi. I teach business communication and public speaking. And this is Professor Vesnik Bislimi. He teaches economics classes. And we are invited here to provide a summary of our interesting discussion today. So I would really like to thank Professor Mimosa for organizing this conference. I think it was a really great learning experience for us as educators. And let me specify, it was about research in undergraduate level. And what we are dealing here at RIT, we have to mention that we are dealing with non-native speakers and students that come from institutions that are very teacher-centered, some students that come from our public institutions. So it really takes a lot of time and effort, especially in the first year, by our wonderful colleagues, Julie and Lorena, to teach them the basics of research, and they were able to show us that today. Also, it was wonderful to learn a little bit about regionally what they do. Countries similar to Kosovo, like North Macedonia, where I originally come from, they are in their infancy as well, just like us here, to incorporate research in the educational process in undergraduate level. So we are working towards it. I would say that it's really nice that we have started this discussion at RITK, and it's really great that we had examples, especially in the first part from the US, where we learned from different institutions what they're doing. Of course, what RIT New York is doing is really interesting and new and innovative. I really liked what Professor Hall told us about how they engage students autonomously in research. I think that's something very new and interesting to explore. I like to present myself in my classes as a facilitator always, and it's kind of new for my students. And I also really liked what you said about research failing most of the time and students accepting that, but also in that program specifying on professionalism and meeting deadlines, which is also very close to my heart because I teach business communication and I have to teach students on how to become professional and meeting deadlines, and that's a very important part of research as well. And then, of course, Professor Behani and Zargari, thank you very much for sharing your experiences. Both of them focused a lot on student autonomy, freedom, especially your personal example, I think was very interesting on how that professor gave you freedom and then you developed a patent. And I think the example of Morehead University, it's really interesting for us, and I would like us to continue to talk about it. I think it's the easiest model for us maybe to apply with undergraduate students as we are in our infancy. And then maybe we can strive to get to where RIT New York is in terms of being more autonomous. But I think this is very, very interesting, and it can be applied in many of our courses, not only the technical parts. Okay, so I know that we have no time, and I would like to allow my colleague, Besnik Bislimi, to continue with his summaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Also, thank you, Mimosa, for forcing me to come today and summarize some of the key lessons. Maybe the first and very important lesson that we could learn from today's presentation is that the problem is not the student involvement, but the problem is how to motivate and professors to be part of the research inclusion in the undergraduate, and this is what we also have here. The second key lesson that we can take from today comes from the movie that Professor Zargari showed us. The key components, if you want, fertile research is to have very good female students, which we have, but also very good male professors, which we don't have, because in your movie I only saw female students interacting with male professors. We see also today only 2 male professors around. Most of the academic part is dominated by females here, so pretty much we fulfill 1/3 of the conditions necessary. If you add also the lack of funds that Mr. Sharabi mentioned. It's important to know that research is beyond a semester project, as Professor Hall mentioned, is a permanent process. Sometimes it will lead to new products or new ideas. Sometimes it will give us maybe upgraded products, creative destruction. Sometimes a new way to produce the existing products. And as you noted, Mr. Hall, in many cases to nothing. So students must know from the very beginning that they will not succeed in the very first attempt, but most times research will lead to nothing. So you have to try many times until you get something. What matters is for us as a new university is to recognize that findings have led to this positive correlation between involving students in undergraduate research and their probability of getting to postgraduate programs, that there is a positive correlation between involving students in undergrad research and graduating on time, and what also was mentioned, that there is a positive correlation between involving students in undergrad research and having a positive feedback about the university, the time spent at the university, and this matters a lot in a country. Another lesson that we could take from this conference is that we maybe need to completely rethink the way how we conceptualize the work studies here at AUK. We usually misuse them to do the job for which we are paid to do, but we saw from Professor Zargari that there are much better ways to utilize them for paid research here inside the institution. And maybe we also need to rethink the way how we design the academic support center. We saw the need from Dr. Hall to work more with the bottom quartile. So we are maybe very good at mentoring the honor students and the best students, but those that could also produce a lot of research are those that are maybe sometimes marginalized by our professor. In the overseas, maybe some of our students in economics classes doing jointly something with the students in economics class in Zagreb or Dubrovnik, but also with the main campus, or maybe some of our professors mentoring students from RIT, Zagreb, and vice versa will be one of the solutions. You also mentioned this two-way process. I think Marika mentioned this, but also the problem of economies of scale. I would say the reverse of this, that size of the class also matters, but I would only add to this the minimum efficient scale, how many students you need so that you can produce fertile research. So this also matters. I cannot read my notes. Yes, legislation is important. We saw how important it can be from the presentation from our colleague from the University Research Institute in North Macedonia. I would also want to add the internal regulations. When our students do some research projects that involve surveys, they have to go through some additional regulations that are imposed by the guidelines of the RIT main campus. The two movies that we saw today maybe provided a confusion that led to the impression that research is fertile only when it is done in engineering, but we saw that, and Professor Zargarli re-emphasized it, that most of the research happens in social sciences, but maybe we don't see this in the 3D printing, but it happens there. And as we saw from the intervention of Professor Peshkopia, appropriability also matters a lot. It's pity if you get involved in research and then somebody else publishes your findings or somebody else patents your results. So this ability to publish and maybe patent the results is of crucial importance. But I think Linda emphasized this correctly. We are still in the beginning phase, and this is an undergraduate institution. In this corner of the Europe, even postgraduate students have real difficulties in publishing the results. Let's mention our students, but we still find some solutions. Sometimes our students publish articles in the daily newspapers when they emphasize their findings from the classes. So we do something, maybe not what Professor Peshkopia would want us to have, and we also, but this is maybe an idealistic approach, something that we could strive for, but still, as you mentioned, we are still in the beginning phase. Okay. Another point that was made from Professor Pinel, and I find it very important, especially for social sciences. The question was whether a single course on writing skills is enough to support the process of research production. I tend to agree with you that it's not enough. That's why we need to supplement it with critical skills, critical thinking, or research courses, other research courses here at RIT. But what we do is that we pick up some courses where we see that research is important, and we reduce the class size to accommodate what Professor Kotori mentioned in her finding. So these are some of the lessons, in my view, that we learned from today. I was told once that a good conference leaves you with more questions at the end of the conference, and I hope that Kamal Sharabi will use this and bring us funds that we can start promoting research more starting from next September. Thank you very much. Thanks to the organizer for the excellent job. This is the second excellent conference that you're organizing. Hope you will not get tired and continue with this. Thank you.
Okay, now see, Besnik is constantly coming and bug me now. Now, since he needs some more money or some research, there were about 115 people that they said are coming today for the conference, and about like 40 of them that didn't show up. Okay, Besnik, now you're gonna, since you're economist, 100 euro per participant didn't show up. You go collect it, all money yours to pay to the students to start some research. Fair enough? He doesn't. See, when it comes to collection, he doesn't want to do the collection. Well, as a first step, I'll match it. You collect them, I match it. Okay? Now, first I'd like to thank you for coming over here and participate. I learned a lot through the process. But one thing I want to emphasize, and I'll give you a story on that. I remember, I'm an electrical engineer. And when I was working on my dissertation, of course, it was like we're taking our sweet time, because the whole part was writing. We didn't want to write, especially as a foreign student, writing English, wasn't that much fun. We delayed it and delayed it and delayed it and delayed it. Till our advisor, he told us, okay, guys, I have a news for you. If you don't submit your final dissertation to me by January, look for another advisor because I'm retiring. And then, this was, we have to do it now. Now, one of the students, that we were working together, he was working on the FM, and so our advisor was Don Schilling. Those are the electrical engineer. Most probably know him. He's the father of the spread the spectrum, and the little toy that you're carrying on your belt is his work, and we did it for free. He got paid, and we did it for free. This guy, for 4 years, worked on a signal that to reduce the bandwidth for the FM, and he wasn't able. At that point, you could have seen him. He was kind of in tears. 4 years is gone. He has no result to give him in order to graduate. On Thursdays from 2 to 3, that's the only time block we could see him. He goes over there, he sees him, and he tells him that, and he's shaking that, okay, he's not graduating. And Don Schilling, what he did, he tapped on his back and said, excellent, you graduate. I said, I didn't get result. He said, you don't have to get a result all the time. There are many research that fails, as Jim mentioned. And that has the same value, but maybe more value than those work that you get result and doesn't fail. And that was one lesson that I learned. Not only me, the rest of us that we were in that lab, we were the cockroach of the communication lab. That's what he referred to us all the time. We learned a lot that always we don't have to get the result, okay? But the whole thing is get involved, explore the idea, and try to come with solution. When there is no, maybe again, we didn't find the solution. Maybe the next guy, when we find the path that gets you to a closed road, okay, they don't follow that path. They go different direction and they get the result. Again, thank you very much for being here. I guess the last word is coming from Mimosa. And then maybe he feeds you some food or something. I don't know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharabi. I just want to thank you once more for attending this event, this conference. It's just the beginning of opening this discussion, and I hope that we will have similar events in the future. Thank you very much first to the U.S. Embassy in Pristina and University Support Grant for enabling this event. Thank you for our guest speakers who traveled, Dr. Behi, Dr. Zargari, Dr. Hall. Thank you, Professor Mrika Kotori, Professor Natalia Popovska. Thank you, Professor Julie Colgini, Lorena Pinel. Thank you, Professor Besnik. Thank you, Professor Linda, for summarizing discussions of both the panels. Thank you, Dita, and thank you, Learta, for moderating our panels. Thank you, students, for helping us, administration, and thank you, a special thank you to the faculty who worked closely with me from the initiating stage of the project until now. And they are Venera, Besnik, Linda, Artan, and all the other supporting faculty. And thank you once more, Dr. Sharabi, for your continuous support. And last but not least, thanks to our administration for making sure that all the technical aspects were on time and organized. Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Lindita Bitsai, who took care for feeding us. And the food is waiting for us in 401. And thank you to our students, volunteer students, Erza, Aurora, Fiola, and Rita for helping us today. Thank you very much, and see you in the next events. And thank you, Shkilchim. Oh, thank you very much for making publicity of this event. Thank you.